Kaiden, are you here now? We're here now, Kaiden. You'll just be talking to me, Luke.
Okay,
So you're in the Orthodox Church,
correct,
and you're sure the Orthodox Church is the true church, right?
correct.
And what method do you think God has given us to verify that, to know with certainty that we have joined his true church?
Um, History.
I agree with you. What specifically about history?
Because if you want to figure out which one is the truth, you go to the source,
I totally agree with
and
you.
then from that source you go down and down until whatever you reach.
We all agree with you. Everyone in this server agrees with that. We all wanted to join the true church too. And we would join any church that could prove that they are the original church, but their doctrines have to match the original church. Have you verified that the Orthodox Church's teachings do match what was taught from the beginning and that lasted throughout the centuries?
Yeah.
Have you actually read the Church Fathers?
Not all of them, but
Ha-
quite some.
have you read at least the Apostolic Fathers?
Yes, actually, that's what I did my research on. Only like the fathers who knew of the apostles or knew of students of the apostles.
And we've read much more than that. We've read all the fathers in the 200s and 300s and 400s as well, and even a lot in the 500s. But we wanted to start in the beginning and move our way forward. And we've noticed with a lot of people, they will just start reading people in the 300s or the 500s or the 1300s, like Palamos.
Yeah, I agree.
And we just think that's crazy. You've got to start at the beginning. Otherwise, you're never going to know if you really do have the original faith. So that's why we didn't start in the 1300s. We started in the 100s. We read all the Apostolic Fathers. Do you mind if I ask which Apostolic Fathers you've read? Have you read like all of Ignatius?
Um, I've read some Ignatius, Clement,
You read
Papias,
all of First
Polycarp.
Clement?
No, I've not finished Clement, no.
Have you read Second Clement?
No, I've not finished like any of these like full writings of these fathers.
I see. You've read quotations from them.
Yes, and then sometimes just some chapters and whatnot.
Well, that's good. We've definitely got to read through them. You've got to read the whole books to get in their heads and to understand how they think about things. So you never got around to reading like Mathetes or Shepherd of Hermas, I'm assuming.
Shepherd of Hermas, I think I read about once,
You read the whole Shepherd of
maybe.
Hermas?
No, like read something from there once.
I see. Well, Caden, if you haven't read them, if you haven't really sat down and read through them, you can't know for sure what they believe. Even I could show you I could show you some excerpts, but I wouldn't do the thing where I just show you one or two sentences. I would show you paragraphs so that you could see the whole context and see exactly how they feel about these things. So let me ask you a question. Do you believe that do you believe the church's understanding of Jesus' divinity existed from the
Oh, of
beginning?
course. Of course.
You don't think that, there were some bishops in the world who were in communion with all the rest of the bishops. They were all in perfect communion. And, some of the bishops thought Jesus was just a man, and some of them thought he's not a man. They just said, we're all just going to get along. That's fine. We're not quite sure whether he is divine or
Oh,
not.
oh no, like the first like three councils were all about his divinity.
So you believe from the beginning that if anybody denied Jesus' divinity, they had to be excommunicated.
It's pretty clear that he's divine in the Gospels and in the New Testament reading, so
I agree
I
with
would
you.
think so.
I agree with you. That is correct. That is true. That in the early church, you had a lot of heretical sects, and they were excommunicated if they ever denied Jesus' full divinity, if they deny that he is the God of the Old Testament, the creator of the universe. That is true. And it's the same with other doctrines. I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised to hear that the whole church agreed about baptism, that we are reborn in baptism and cleansed of our sins in baptism, and that the Eucharist really is the partaking of Jesus' body and blood for the remission of sins and for the strengthening of the spirit. And they also believed in the conjunction of faith and works, not just faith alone. From the very beginning, all of that was perfectly fleshed out. We have statements from men like Irenaeus and Tertullian and others saying that the church has received a complete system of doctrine. A complete system of doctrine. They didn't believe that it needed to be added to over time. So you agree with all that?
Added to over time, I don't think so because new stuff popped up regarding Christ and his divinity, like two wills and stuff. So I think doctrine, when certain problems come up, needs to be added to.
Well, you mean fleshed out. You mean explained in more detail.
Yes.
But being explained in more detail is not the same as changing a doctrine or creating a new doctrine, right?
No.
So no new doctrines were ever created, but the existing doctrines were fleshed out and explained in more detail. We would agree with that.
Yeah.
For instance, you know, who could possibly name all of the prophecies in the Old Testament about Christ? There are too many. There are so many. Nobody has ever been able to name and to count all of the prophecies about Christ. There are hundreds. I know people that have tried. They've gotten up to around 400, but it's just too many. They keep on adding more all the time. So that would be an example of fleshing out something more, adding more proofs and confirmations for an existing doctrine. But we can't create a new doctrine, can we?
No.
I agree with you. And the Catholic and the Orthodox Church doesn't even claim that they have the ability to create a new doctrine. Whenever they would teach a doctrine, they would claim that it did exist from the beginning. But the problem is
Yep.
there are some doctrines they teach, such as the idea that God wants to be worshiped through a lifeless image, through a dead block of wood or stone, that never existed in the early church. So it's not just it being clarified. The early church actually condemned that concept. They were aware of that concept, and they condemned it universally for over 500 years. And it wasn't until you get to the 600s that you have bishops teaching a doctrine that God wants to be worshipped through paintings or statues. That was the first time that appeared. And even then, it was opposed by most of the church.
Oh yeah.
You
I
agree with
agree.
that?
Oh, of course.
You do agree with that?
Worshiping them? Yes. Worshiping
I see.
worshiping them, yes.
So it comes down to the definition of worship. Well, let's not use the word
Yes.
worship then, because that's too ambiguous of a word. That's not a Greek word. Let's go with the Greek. So when I say worship, I'm referring to two Greek words that both are translated as worship. So let's not be generic like that. Do you know in Exodus where God says, let me read it to you.
No graven image?
Well, let me read you the exact word so that we're not being ambiguous here. Okay, God says, "You shall not make for yourselves a carved idol." Here, I'll post it. I'm posting it right here.
Uh uh
He says, "You
trying to
shall not
find
make
it.
for yourselves a carved idol." I'm using the Septuagint. "You shall not make for yourselves a carved idol, nor any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water underneath the earth. You shall not bow down to them." That's the word proskuneo. "Nor serve
Mhm.
them." That's the word latria. So no bowing, no serving. I think you know what it means to bow down to something, but do you know what it means to serve an image? Do you know what that word serve is? Latria?
Latria? Yeah.
What does that mean?
Um, to like worship at the highest ability.
Well, it's a more specific definition, but yeah, it usually is a spiritual kind of service. It usually is a sacrifice. So latria
Yes.
means you're offering sacrifices. I can give you a bunch of examples in the Old Testament, but God says over and over again that, he set aside the Levitical priests to perform the liturgy and to do latria. He uses that word latria. I can give you a few
Uh-huh.
examples. Here's a couple. I could give you a lot. But like here's Exodus. God says, "Is it a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of Yahweh, and to stand before the congregation to minister?" That's latria. to minister to them. And they give all the examples of latria, like here's Second Chronicles. And the priests who minister, that's the word liturgy, liturgio, the priests who minister to the Lord are the sons of Aaron, and the Levites attend to their duties, and they offer to the Lord. So here's the liturgy. They offer to the
Uh-huh.
Lord burnt offerings morning and evening, and fragrant incense. And the showbread is set on the pure table, and the golden lampstand with its lamps burns every evening. So we keep the charge of the Lord our God, but you have forsaken him. Okay, so they're just saying this is it. This is our liturgy. This is our ministry. Here's one more. I'll give you one more example. Here's Sirach. It says,
Uh-huh.
Moses ordained him and anointed him with holy oil. This is talking about Aaron the priest.
Uh-huh.
And it was an everlasting covenant for him and for his descendants for all the days of heaven to minister, that's the word latria, to minister to the Lord and serve as priests and bless his people in his name. He chose him out of all the living to offer sacrifice to the Lord, incense and a pleasing odor as a memorial portion to make atonement for the people. So you can see how latria and then offering sacrifices, doing the liturgy, all this is connected, you see?
Yes.
So specifically, latria means some kind of spiritual service. Can you see that in the verses I'm posting here?
Yes, sir.
So you're not allowed to bow down to an image or serve an image. Let me ask you a question. Do you believe that it would be a sin to offer a sacrifice to an icon of a saint?
Offer as a form of worship, yes.
Well, no, just offer a sacrifice.
Oh yeah.
So definitely it is a sin to offer a sacrifice to an icon of a saint.
Yes.
Now, in this verse that I just posted here, God says, you shall not make an image, and then he says, you shall not bow down to it nor serve it. So he says you are not to bow down to it or do service to it, like sacrifices. So you're affirming the second
Uh-huh.
part. You're saying we cannot offer sacrifices, but are you saying we can bow down to lifeless images? We can do the first part?
Hold on, say that again, my fault.
Well, God says there are two things you're not allowed to do to images. You can't bow down to them
Hmm.
and you can't serve them. You just told me we cannot be serving, we cannot be offering sacrifices to images, even of a saint.
Yeah,
But you're saying we
of
can bow
course.
down to images of the saints, right?
Yeah, but it's a different type of bow though. It's not the same bow that is used for like bowing in a worship way.
Well, is it proskuneo?
Yes, in a way.
Well, it's 100% proskuneo, but you're saying
Of course.
there's something else going on besides just the proskuneo.
No, not as like an act of worship, no.
Well, what if somebody used that same reasoning, Caden, and they said, I'm going to offer sacrifices, but it's like a different kind of sacrifice to an image? Would that be okay?
No, but we don't offer sacrifice in general.
Well, I'll
At
come to that
least
in
in
a
the
second.
Orthodox Church
You
does
do
not.
though, but I'm going to come to that in just a second. I just want to point out to you there's an inconsistency here that you're saying. Like I know that the Orthodox say this command about not bowing to images, it does not apply to us. They'll say that's only talking about pagan images, right? Haven't you heard them say
Yeah.
that? But
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, Caden, if I ask them or if I ask you, hey, are you allowed to offer sacrifices? Are you allowed to do latria to images? And they'll say, no, that's totally off limits, even with a Christian image. So then they'll acknowledge it actually doesn't even matter if it's depicting a good a saint or a deity that's true, like Jesus. They'll say that doesn't matter at that point. You're not allowed to offer sacrifices. So they're now admitting that the second commandment does apply to even their so-called holy images. They're just saying it's the second part of the commandment about offering sacrifices that doesn't, that's not allowed. But the first part is allowed, the bowing to the images. Do you see why I find that inconsistent?
Yeah, I can see why because it's not really like it doesn't go really into detail. So when you look at it from a outside perspective, it looks like we're literally going against what the Bible told us to.
Are you
But
Eastern Orthodox or are you Oriental Orthodox?
Eastern.
Okay. Are you aware that the Eastern Orthodox do something called sensing the images? Do you know what that is when you sense the icons?
No, you can elaborate.
Well, I'm talking about giving incense to icons. They specifically burn incense and they swing the incense to the icons. They give it to the icons. Have
Yeah.
you ever seen that?
Oh yeah. I
You,
see it during liturgy.
you see it during the liturgy every Sunday.
Mhm.
So that's called
Yeah.
censing the icons. They offer incense to the icons, or rather, they offer incense to the saints through the icons, and they offer it to Christ through the images. Now, Kaiden, is incense a sacrifice?
Um, it could be and it could not be. It depends on how you use it.
Well, don't the Orthodox justify offering incense in liturgy because that's what the Jews did in the Old Testament liturgy?
Yeah, we do use incense, but we don't use it as a form of worship. It's more as a symbolic act of the prayers rising to the saints. That's why when you see him do it towards the icons, it's just symbolic of the prayers of these saints rising up to heaven. It's not like we're actually offering them as like a sacrifice to them. It's more of a symbolic way of using the incense.
So so they're not using it as a sacrifice like it was used in the Old Testament. Is that correct?
No, no.
Now, Caden, I'm going to have to inform you of something. That's simply not true. You are contradicting the official teaching of the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Eastern Orthodox Church teaches that just as incense was offered as a sacrifice in the Old Testament, incense is offered as a sacrifice in the New Testament. You have lots of Orthodox priests saying this. I was just watching one the other day. Let me share screens. Are you on your computer or your phone?
Computer.
Okay, watch this. This was just posted a few days ago. This is you. I'm sure you've seen Cleave to Antiquity, and here's Father Stephen DeYoung. They're responding to that annoying guy. Oh, I forget his name. A messenger of truth. Have you seen these kinds of videos?
I think so,
Listen
yeah.
to Stephen DeYoung, a priest, how he refutes, how he criticizes Protestants who don't understand how to worship God properly. You see, the Orthodox and Catholics say Protestants don't know how to worship God, but we Orthodox do. Now listen to what he
If you're an
says.
evangelical, you don't have any concept to
Here,
understand
I'll
that,
rewind a little bit. Here we go.
right?
Yeah.
If you're an evangelical, you don't have any concept of the difference between veneration and worship because you don't worship. There is no worship taking place at evangelical churches
Yes,
because there is no sacrifice.
right.
There is no offering of the Eucharist. There's no offering of incense. There's no sacrifice.
Now, did you hear what he just said?
Yeah.
He said Protestants don't know anything about the difference between veneration and worship. He's saying worship is the higher thing, veneration is the lower thing. And he says because you Protestants don't have the Eucharist and you don't offer incense, you don't actually offer worship to God. I'm sure he's thinking of the word latria correctly.
Uh-huh.
He's saying you aren't worshiping God with the Eucharist and with incense. He says these are sacrifices. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I did.
So do you understand? You see that actually you're contradicting what they're saying. They say the
Well,
incense is
is
a
that
sacrifice.
is that official Orthodox teaching,
Yes,
or is
it
that just
is.
one priest saying
It
that?
is official Orthodox teaching. Here's a little link to our little website where we collect these things. We've got both the Orientals and the Eastern Orthodox all saying the same thing. We've got a lot of quotes in here. But I would ask you something. See, I could show you a lot of things. I could show you their websites. I could show you their councils. I could show you the priests in videos like that one. But I have to ask you, where do I find the Orthodox Church's official teaching on this subject? Where can I go to find the official teaching?
There's multiple websites. You have like the Diocese of America. You could just read up on like Orthodox wikis pretty much.
I see. Well,
There's also like official sites for our jurisdiction where you can go find information.
I see. Well, when I go on there, I find things like this one. Here's the official Orthodox wiki. If you've seen this
Why
one,
is why is this not loading? I'm trying to. Okay. All right. Let me pull up your screen. Okay.
Yes,
I have
it's
it.
being slow. It's loading slowly. Just a second here. But this is what it says on the official Orthodox Wiki, which is quoting from a book called A Dictionary of Greek Orthodoxy. So that's what Orthodox Wiki has. But
Okay.
here's a section on incense. They say there is no clear evidence of its Christian use until about the year 500. Censers may at first have been fixed with the introduction of portable censers originating later. The incensing of the altar, church, and congregation is first recorded in the 9th century. So that's what it says on Orthodox Wiki. They're saying it didn't exist for
All right.
500 years, and even then it took a long time to develop. Here's an Orthodox named John Whiteford. You've probably heard of him. He's extremely famous. But he has a section, or he has a website, and on his website he has an article called Censing at Home, and he gives instructions about how to offer incense. He talks about censing the icons in your prayer corner. He says the offering of incense to God is a practice which dates back to the time of Moses, when God gave commands as to how to burn it. So he's saying offering incense to God. He's talking about offering it. That's a sacrifice. That's a gift. The word sacrifice just means a gift. It's something you're giving to God. So they
Yeah.
believe they are still offering incense to God in the New Testament the same way they were in the Old Testament. But at the same time, they also admit that it didn't exist for the first 500 years of church history. And even then, it took a long time for it to develop into what it is now. The early church rejected offering incense to God. Now, I don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves. Do you remember why I brought up incense in the first place, though?
Yeah, because it's used as a form of worship.
Yes, it is a form of worship. It is a sacrifice. So God says when it comes to images, you should not bow down to them or serve them. And you said, well, we are allowed to bow down to them, just not offer sacrifices to them. But now I'm showing you the Orthodox do offer incense to their images, and they believe it's a continuation of worshiping God with incense from the Old Testament. They acknowledge it is a sacrifice, and so do the Oriental Orthodox. They all say the same thing about it. So actually, they are worshiping, they're both bowing and offering spiritual service, sacrifice, to icons. Are you starting to realize that now?
I wouldn't say that though, because we have different terms regarding like the Greek word. I don't know how to describe it. Latracha. What
Latria?
is it called? Yes, we have that word for God alone, and then there's another word. I forgot what it's called. It starts with a P. Those are for the icons, for the other things as well.
But don't they offer incense to icons of all the saints?
Yes.
So it's not just for God alone.
I can see the way you're saying that, but we have different categories for that.
Well, Kaiden, I'm gonna have to call your bluff on that. What do you mean? There's just offering incense. If God says it's not allowed, how can somebody say it is allowed? They're just setting aside God's commandment. And they're even admitting to you, I just proved to you the Orthodox Church admits this didn't exist in the first 500 years of church history. So how can they
Yeah.
bash the Protestants and say, you Protestants are not worshiping God because you don't offer him incense, while they're also admitting that the early church never did this? And the early church
Yeah, I
actually
think
rejected it.
yeah, I'm not even gonna lie. What he said, that was a stupid argument. You do not need incense. You don't need incense as far as your worship. That's a stupid argument from him. I'm not even gonna lie.
I think I agree with you. It's very stupid, but it's not just him. Remember, all the Orthodox say it. Here's John Whiteford on his website. He says, because of the command and revelation of God regarding the offering of incense, the church uses incense as an acceptable offering in its divine services. Since the parish church uses incense, so should the family church use incense as an offering pleasing to God. So he says, we're still offering incense to God. The church does it. You should do it at home. Offer incense to God because they're saying that's what God commanded and revealed. He says because of the command and revelation of God. This isn't just one person, Kaiden. You're right
Yeah.
now realizing what your whole church teaches. They are continuing an outdated practice that God completely abolished. and they're using the Jews to justify it. Are you a Jew, Kaiden?
No.
I'm not a Jew. I don't want to be a Jew. God is not happy with the Jewish people. The Jewish people did not know
No.
how to worship God.
I agree.
Can I show you something from John Chrysostom?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a section right here. This is not on icons. This is a section we have on incense. And we
Okay.
quote a lot of church fathers in here, a ton. And we add more all the time. We just added some quotations yesterday that we were reading. Here's John Chrysostom, though. He's got some great sections. And I know you'll respect this because you respect John Chrysostom. So he talks about incense a lot. Here's the part he says. Now, have you read the Gospel of John where Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman and he tells her that the Jews don't know how to worship God? He says, God is a spirit. Those who wish to worship God
Yeah.
must worship in spirit and in truth. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And he bashes them because they use a temple. He says, you know, an hour is coming and now is when you're not going to worship God on this mountain or in the temple. He says, God's a spirit. So he means you can worship God everywhere. This is what he says. This is John Chrysostom now commenting on the Gospel of John. God is a spirit. But when he says this, he declares nothing else than his incorporeal nature. Now the service of that which is incorporeal must be of the same character, and must be offered by that in us which is incorporeal, to wit, the soul and purity of mind. It is not, he says, by purity of body, but by that which is incorporeal in us, namely the mind, that the incorporeal one is served. Sacrifice then not sheep and calves, but dedicate yourself to the Lord. Make yourself a holocaust. That is to offer a living sacrifice. Now listen to this part, Kaiden. John Chrysostom says, you must worship in truth, as former things were types, such as circumcision. Kaiden, do you do circumcision in the Orthodox Church?
No.
Okay, he says former things...
Baptism is the circumcision.
Exactly. We have a spiritual circumcision. It's invisible. He says former things were types. So he says, you must worship in truth, as former things were types, such as circumcision and whole burnt offerings. Do you do whole burnt offerings in the Orthodox Church?
No.
No. Former things, such as circumcision, whole burnt offerings and victims, and incense, they now no longer exist, but all is truth. That's what John Chrysostom says. He says, and great is the difference between Aaron and Christ, so great should it be between us and the Jews. All these things have been done away, and there has been brought in their stead the reasonable service. He goes on and on, he bashes it. He quotes in the Old Testament when God says, to what purpose do you bring me incense from Sheba? You see also that already from the first, the one class has given place, and these have come in their stead. These therefore let us bring, for the other indeed are the offerings of wealth and of persons who have possessions, but these are offerings of virtue. Those come from without, but these come from within. Anyway, he says these new spiritual sacrifices have been brought on instead of the old ones. You don't do circumcision, you don't offer animals, you don't offer incense. And this is just one little quotation that I could show you, but they all say it. That they don't do incense anymore. And they also rejected bowing down to images of any kind. The Orthodox and Catholics cannot produce a single church father from the first 500 years of church history who taught that God wants to be worshipped by offering incense or bowing down to images. There's not even one.
You don't need that, because at the end of the day, he doesn't need that. That is not like like I know a lot of priests say that, but at the end of the day, like legally within the church, it's like you don't need it. Like it's not required.
Well, what if
Yes.
it's wait a second. You're saying it's not required, but the question is whether it's even allowed. It is required though, Kaiden. You're mistaken about that. I might as well just show you that it is required. But the fact is, even if it were just allowed, that would still be a sin, because God makes it clear he hates incense. He hates people bowing down to lifeless images. But have you read like the Second Council of Nicaea, what they say about whether this is required?
Yeah.
Do they say it's required?
No.
They don't? Let me read it to you. We salute the venerable images. We place under anathema, that means you're accursed. We place under anathema those who do not do this. Anathema to them who presume to apply to the venerable images the things said in Holy Scripture about idols. Anathema to those who do not salute. So it's talking about proskuneo, bowing down. Anathema to those who do not salute the holy and venerable images. And they say at the end, and if anyone does not so believe, but undertakes to debate the matter further, and is evil affected with regard to the veneration due to the sacred images, such a one our holy ecumenical council, fortified by the inward working of the Spirit of God and by the traditions of the fathers and the church, anathematizes. Now, anathema is nothing less than complete separation from God. So they said, anathema, you're accursed if you don't salute the holy and venerable images. Here's the Orthodox Church in America. This is their website. I have a link to all these. You can click on them. They said, it is the Orthodox faith that icons are not only permissible, but are spiritually necessary, because the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Christ is truly man, and as man, truly the icon of the invisible God. Here's Father Spiridon. Have you seen his channel?
Not the chance. Wait, actually, hold up.
I'm
I'm
sure
not
you
good
have.
with names.
I'm sure
I'll
you've seen
probably.
this guy. He's the big, fat British guy.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Yes, here's a video he made. It's called Icons, Graven Images, or Necessary for Salvation. Here's a transcript. Actually, I'll just play it for you. Let's listen.
Icons permissible. They are necessary. They are necessary in our worship. The council declared that every church must have holy icons. Every Christian home, our vestments, our church vessels. They also declared, of course, that our altars must have part of a saint's relics inserted into them to draw us closer to the heavenly realm. But with regards to the holy icons, the council declared that we must all reverently venerate the images, holy images, because icons are a part of the way that we are sanctified.
Did you hear him?
Yeah.
You've probably seen this big guy. Here, he's got a video. I mean, all the Orthodox say this. Why icons prove Jesus is God? This is that guy, Father Moses.
Which was the
this
church said.
dude.
Yeah, well, they're all the same. Remember, they're just referring to the council. They do believe it's necessary. That's why he made a video called Icons, Are They Graven Images or Necessary for Salvation? What is his answer to that, Kaiden? Does he say they're necessary for salvation?
Yeah, he does.
He does. That's what they actually believe. So it's not just allowed, it's necessary. But Kaiden, let's imagine in some scenario that actually God does consider this to be idolatry. Do you think it would be okay just to allow idolatry? Or are they required to actually ban it, to pronounce anyone accursed who engages in this if it is idolatry? Can you just allow something like this? Are they off the hook if they don't require it, they just allow idolatry? Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to actually forbid it, don't they? They can't say sin is allowed. They can't be in communion with others who say it's allowed. Especially they can't be in communion with others who say it's required. You agree?
Yeah.
If it is idolatry. The question is whether it's idolatry. So you can speak, of course. I just want to recap real quick. We went over the second commandment. God said, you're not to bow down to images or serve them. And the Orthodox say this does not apply to their icons. It's only talking about pagan icons. But you would agree we should not be offering sacrifices to images, right?
Yeah, no.
And then I showed you that not only do they bow down to him, not only are they breaking the first part of this commandment, but they do offer sacrifices because incense is a sacrifice according to the Old Testament. And they admit that incense is a sacrifice. They do offer incense to their icons, both of Christ and the saints. So they are breaking both the first part of that commandment and the second part. Don't bow down or serve them. And service is offering sacrifices.
Well, we know in the Old Testament, people bow down to objects and other people. Are we going to call that idolatry too?
Well, let's define idolatry. Now remember, idolatry is when you offer sacrifices to something. Let's say I were to...
Is that the definition of idolatry?
Yes, idolatry is two words. It's the word idol and latry. Latry is that word latreia. It's service. So idol
Yes.
service. You're doing service to a form. The word idol comes from the word eidos, that just means a form of something. Idol does not mean a false deity. It just means a form. It just means an image. But ever since the Old Testament was translated into the Greek Septuagint, or by the 70 elders, that word idol was used. And it's a Greek word that existed in Greek culture for a long time. They didn't consider it to be some kind of bad word, talking about a pagan image, a pagan deity. But the Jews considered all images to be idols. They called all images idols, which just means a form. And the word idol has a very negative connotation, but it really is a neutral word that just means an image. So God tells the people in the Old Testament, the Jews, don't worship idols, don't worship images. And the Catholics will say, well, we don't worship idols, we worship images. That's just so silly. That's just completely absurd.
Yeah.
In fact, when Jerome made the translation, the Latin Vulgate, he translated from the Greek into Latin. Did you know he translated almost every instance of that word idol as the word image? The word image is a Latin word. So he translated the Greek word idol into the Latin word image. So, like, let me show you some examples. Let me show you some examples where he does this. I'm showing you this so that you can see that there really is a distinction without a difference. When people say, we do bow down to images, we do serve images, but not idols, because those are the same thing. See this little section? We venerate images, not idols. What is an idol? So Jerome, when he translates like John, 1 John 5:21, this is where John says, "Dear children, guard yourselves from idols." He uses the Greek word idol. But Jerome uses just the Latin word simulacrus. That is the Latin word for image. It just means a simulation of something, a simulated image. He says just guard yourself from images. That's what Jerome considers that to mean. And all the other Latin writers, like Tertullian, translate it the same way. Guard yourselves from images. It's the same when they say, that the Israelites made a calf in those days and they brought a sacrifice to the idol. Well, Jerome just says image. He considers image and idol to be interchangeable. This is just an example of that. There's no real distinction there. We don't serve lifeless images, Kaiden. Do you know why God does not want us to bow down to a lifeless image? Do you understand? Have you ever heard what the church fathers say is wrong with that?
Yeah.
What is it? What's so bad about bowing down to an image?
Because it could be a form of worship.
Right, but why not bow down to an image of God? They do talk about that, like an image of Jesus. They say they don't even bow down to an image of Jesus. Do you know why they say that?
You can elaborate on it.
I'll explain it to you. So, an image or an idol, either one, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's a lifeless thing. It's either a block of wood or a stone, usually overlaid with some gold or some precious material. But it's inferior to you. And they had this idea that you shouldn't be bowing down to something that is inferior to you, something that's not even alive. They said it would be better for you to be a servant of an animal than to be a servant to something that's not even alive, because at least an animal is alive. You know how you brought up an argument. I want to answer this now. You said, what about bowing down to the Ark of the Covenant? Because that's a very common argument that the Catholics make. They'll say, Joshua bowed
Well, not
down.
even that. Well, there's people who bow to Gentiles.
Yes. Let me answer that for you. So, let's go down. Let's look at some instances of bowing. See this where we have a section on bowing?
Yes.
Well, there's a big difference between bowing down to a lifeless image and bowing down to a person at face value. What is the difference?
That they're alive.
Exactly. They're alive. There's a huge difference. How can anybody use an example of bowing down to a dead thing as a justification for bowing down to a living thing? But the church fathers didn't see any problem with that, because a living person is obviously made in God's image. So you're not actually degrading yourself. So you're right. There are tons of instances where people are bowing down to living people, but Kaiden, there are even instances where bowing down to a living person is forbidden. For instance, in the story of Esther, there was a man named Mordecai. He's a Jew, and he bowed down to the king, but he refused to bow down to this evil man named Haman. He was a Canaanite who somehow had worked his way up to be in the palace, and he hated the Jews. He wanted to destroy the Jews. And Mordecai considered it to be a sin if he were to bow down to this guy who was the second in command over the kingdom. Do you understand why it would be no sin to bow down to King Xerxes, but it would be a sin to bow down to Haman?
Yeah.
Can you explain it? Can you think of any reasons off the top of your head? Why it would be a sin to bow down to Haman, but it's not a sin to bow down to Xerxes. You know, Xerxes is not a Jew. He's not a Christian. He doesn't believe in the real God. But it was okay for Mordecai to bow down to him. It was okay for Joseph to bow down to Pharaoh. It was okay for Daniel to bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar. Why couldn't Mordecai bow down? It also says Esther bowed down to Xerxes, but Mordecai would not bow down to the second in command. Do you know why that would be a sin to bow down to him?
Why?
Well, it's because he's an evil man. See, we can bow down to people, but we're not allowed to bow down to evil people, not people who hate God's people, not people who are hostile to God's people. We can render honor to someone, to a living human being, but we don't honor people who are hostile to God. See, Xerxes was kind to the Jews. He was actually helpful to them. You know, he let them, go and live peacefully in his land. He showed respect to the Jews. He's the one who came right after Darius, King Darius, who was over Daniel. Darius was also very kind and actually commanded everybody to worship the Jewish God. Anyway, so we don't worship evil people, and there's another kind of thing that we don't worship. We don't worship lifeless images. And the reason why is because a lifeless image is inferior to us. You degrade yourself if you make yourself a servant of something that's not even alive. Now, do you understand what it means to bow? Why would it be a sin to bow down to a lifeless image or to an evil person? Do you know what bowing means? What does bowing mean? Has anybody ever told you that?
I know there's two different forms of bowing, which is bowing in a worship way and then in a respect and awe type of way.
Well, who knows? Who knows what those two things mean, Kaiden? What you're saying is so ambiguous. It's so vague. Nobody could ever really understand the distinction. You've got to be more specific. Because would you say that you're allowed to bow down to, like if Nebuchadnezzar told you to bow down to his golden image, would you bow down to it?
No.
No. But couldn't you bow down to it in the nice way that you're talking about? You said there are two ways. Couldn't you bow down to it in the good way?
No, because why would you give veneration to a statue of a man who is not of God at all?
But Daniel did bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar. You could bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar. You could bow down to Pharaoh, like Joseph did, and his father Jacob. Or you could be Esther. You could bow down to King Xerxes in Persia. God did not consider that a sin, Kaiden. But why was it a sin to bow down to his image?
Because it could be idolatry.
Well, aren't you allowed to bow down to him, though? You're allowed to bow down to the living Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh, because it's dead.
Because it's dead. But haven't you heard the Orthodox say things to you like, the honor paid to the image passes on to its prototype? Have you ever heard that before?
No.
That's a phrase that they use. They say, if you honor the image, you are honoring the king. So you can give honor to that image, and it passes through him like a portal. It goes through the image, and it goes to the living king. So you're allowed to bow down to a king, right?
Yeah.
God doesn't consider that a sin. The Orthodox say that all day long. You know that it's not a sin to bow down to a living person unless they're an evil person who's hostile to God's people. We would be allowed to bow down to a living person. So why then was it a sin to bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's image if you're allowed to bow down to the living Nebuchadnezzar? Are you starting to see it more clearly?
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. Because the Orthodox will always say the reason why it is a sin to bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's image was because he claimed to be a god. And that's not true, by the way. Nowhere in the text does Nebuchadnezzar say, I am a god. But let me ask you a hypothetical question, Caden.
Wait, he does ask for worship, right?
He tells them
He
to
does.
bow down. That's all he says. He just used the word
Hold
proskuneo.
on, let's.
Well, we're leading to it, Caden. I can cut you off at the chase. Trust me, I'm very familiar with the passage. He says nothing about
Yeah,
being a
yeah.
god.
No, you can keep going.
Let me ask you a hypothetical question there, because I know where you're going with it. You're saying, he's wanting more honor for himself than is due for a Christian
Mm.
or a Jew to give him. So let me ask you a hypothetical, because I want you to think philosophically here. I want you to understand your own doctrine. What if Nebuchadnezzar had said to Daniel and everybody in the land, I am not a god. I'm just a man. I'm just the king of the land. I'm not a god. Now bow down to my image. Would it be okay to bow down to his image then?
Nah.
Why not?
I'll say because it's dead,
Because it's dead.
and it's not anything of God.
Yes. And are we allowed to bow down and give even a little bit of honor to lifeless images? Can we do the little bow that you're talking about?
No.
You're correct. You're not allowed to. I want you to know what bowing means, though, because the scriptures tell us what bowing means. There are certain physical acts that have a natural, innate meaning. For instance, if you were to spit on somebody, if you spat in somebody's face, what does that mean? You haven't even said a single word to them, but you have said something just with your action. What is it that you've said with your action?
That you do not like them,
That's
I
right.
guess.
What if you kiss somebody or hug somebody? What are you saying to them?
You love them.
Exactly. See, God has given us certain physical actions we do that have a meaning to it, even if you don't say a word. Now, if you bow down to somebody, if you do proskuneo, which actually means you bow all the way down to the floor, your face is touching the ground, do you know what that innate meaning is?
Not necessarily.
I'll tell you what it is. See, people all around the world do it. They all have this natural feeling of what to do when you're in the presence of some great one, especially someone who has power over you. They'll bow down to him. That's ubiquitous in all cultures. When you bow down to somebody, you're making yourself inferior to that person who's standing over you. The meaning of bowing is that you're acknowledging that person to be superior to you, and you're declaring yourself to be their servant. You're saying, you're my Lord, and you're saying, I'm your slave. You're making yourself lower than them. You're letting them tower over you as this very tall person while you're down on the dirt like a bug. So that makes them seem to be greater than you. That's what a person says when they bow down before somebody else. They're saying, I'm inferior, you are greater, I am your servant. That's why in the Old Testament you have all these instances, like with Abraham, when it says the sons of Heth were extremely kind to Abraham. Abraham was a stranger in the land. He needed a place to bury his wife, and he asked these men if they would please give him a plot of land to bury his wife on. Even though he's a stranger, he doesn't own any of their land. He's saying, can I just buy some of your land and bury my wife? And these men respected him very much, and they bowed to Abraham. They said, Abraham, you're like a king to us. That's what they told him. You're like a prince to us. Take any part of the land you want and bury your dead. And Abraham bowed to them and said, no, I am your servant. I am here at your service, guys. I will pay you big dollars. Tell me how much it'll cost and I'll pay anything. And they bowed to Abraham, and then he bowed to them, and then they bowed to him. And they were having a bowing contest because they were both at each other's service. They were both saying, no, you are greater, you are greater. You get it? That's what bowing means. All throughout the scriptures, whenever somebody bows, they always call the person they're bowing to their Lord. For instance, Abraham, when he saw Jesus coming, when he saw the Lord with the two angels coming, it says Abraham bowed himself to the ground and he said, my lords, if I found grace in your sight, don't pass by your servant. He's bowing down. By bowing down, he's saying, you're my lords, I'm your servant. Do you remember in Revelation when John bows down to the angel and the angel says, do not do that, for I am your fellow servant? Remember that?
Yeah.
And it's all throughout the scriptures. Joseph has the dream. Remember he has a dream? Do you remember what happens in Joseph's dream that his brothers get angry at him about?
That he rules over them.
Yes. Do you remember what actually specifically happened in the dream? Remember they were out binding sheaves of wheat and something happened with the wheat.
No, I do not remember that specifically.
But you remember most of it though, so you're on the right track. He says, I dreamed that we were binding sheaves in the middle of the field, and my sheaf of wheat stood up straight, and your sheaves turned around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brother said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? And shall you indeed be Lord over us? See, they understand bowing means they're all becoming his servants and he's Lord over them. Are you getting the idea of bowing?
Yes.
I gave like 30 instances of it here, but I'll just show you a couple. In the Church Fathers' writings, here's a book called Apostolic Constitutions, which the Orthodox respect very much. It talks about Joshua bowing down to the angel of the Lord, which is actually Jesus. It says, him did Joshua the son of Nun see as the captain of the Lord's hosts in armor for their assistance against Jericho, to whom Joshua fell down and worshipped. So that's the word proskuneo. He fell down and bowed to, as a servant does to his master.
Yes.
You see the very clear meaning? Here's Lactantius, another church father who lived in the 300s. He says, for he who worships, talking about bowing, he who worships is naturally lower and weaker than that which is worship. So you get the idea of why it would be wrong for us to bow down to a lifeless image. What are we saying to that image if we're bowing down to it?
Better than us?
It's better than me. It's better. It's greater than me.
Yep.
I'm inferior. Can we, is that allowed to us? Can we say that to a lifeless image?
No.
Why? Isn't it greater than you? I mean, what are you? Aren't you just a piece of dirt? Aren't we just dust? God made us from the dust, didn't he? Technically we're equal, aren't we?
Yeah.
No, no, you're greater than dirt.
Wait, what? Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm
agree.
playing devil's advocate, Kaiden. Are you superior to dirt? Are you superior to a block of wood?
I guess.
How so?
guess I
How are
am.
you superior?
Made in the image of God.
Yes, you are made in the
Alive.
image of God. I mean, you're alive, you're conscious. You're not even just an animal. I mean, are animals made in the image of God?
No.
They aren't. They're alive. So what's the difference? Do you know what the image of God is, what that is specifically?
Humans.
Well, what do humans have that animals don't have?
I don't know. They have a lot of stuff. Well, I mean, we just look different. I mean, they technically have what we have, but we just look different. I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, they have hands, feet, legs, arms.
You think the main difference is just how they look different from us?
Well, actually, I'll go to Genesis and go that we rule over them. We have
That's
dominion
right.
over them.
You got it. How did you know that? Where did you learn that?
Reading my Bible.
Well, you are exactly correct. I mean, I'm impressed. I'm genuinely impressed because the church fathers talk about this, and even I didn't understand this concept until I read the church fathers. But look at John Chrysostom. He talks about what it means that they're made in our, or when God says, "Let us make man in our image." He says, he says, what in fact does the text go on to say? Let them have control or dominion of the fish of the sea, the birds of the heaven, and all the reptiles creeping on the earth. So, image refers to the matter of control, not anything else. That's what John Chrysostom says. He says, having dominion over all the animals on the earth is what it means to be made in God's image, because God is the greatest. He has control over everything. So we are like God because we are set over everything in creation. That's what it means to be made in God's image. We're the most intelligent. We're able to harness everything and make it serve us. So you got it. You are starting to understand then why it would be a kind of sacrilege. It'd be a kind of blasphemy for us to bow down to something that's not only not made in God's image, but it's even below that. Like, would it be okay, Kaiden, for you to bow down to your dog? Would it be okay for you to say to your dog, "Dog, you are my master. I'm your servant. Command me and I will obey." Is that messed up if you do that?
Yeah.
What about like your child? Let's say you get married and have kids someday. Would it be okay for you to tell your child, "My child, I am your slave. Command me and I will obey"?
No, that's not right.
Yeah, that's messed up. Well, what if you had a wife? Do you know enough about marriage to know whether a wife should be obeying her husband or a husband should be obeying his wife?
The wife needs to obey the husband.
That is correct. So it would be messed up if a husband even said, "Wife, you are greater than I. I am your servant, and I will obey you." That would be messed up. So if it's wrong to do it to a wife, it's wrong to do it to a child, it's wrong to do it to your dog. Do you think that an icon in the Orthodox Church is greater than, let's say, a living animal? Tell me honestly. I want you to think about it because I know that you have
No.
reverence for the icons. You don't. Do you think that it would be like if you had the choice in a burning building to either save an icon or save a human being? Do you think that there is like any kind of credit that would be given to you if you save the icon instead of the human being?
Yes, I already know. I already know there is. I do. Uh,
You do think there is credit in saving the icon instead of the human being?
no, I'm saying that the church probably says that.
They do say that. They do believe that it would be better to save an icon than a human being. They actually teach that. Let me show you. Let me show you something. I was shocked to hear this as well, but one of their favorite saints. Here we go. Have you ever heard of Theodosia of Constantinople?
No.
Well, during the iconoclasts, in the 700s, when the emperors were going back and forth, one emperor would be against worshiping God through images, and another one would be for it. They would go back and forth, one endorsing it, the other condemning it. This went on for about like 150 years, all the way until the early 800s, 815. So in the early 700s, here, I'm on Wikipedia if you want to read a short summary of this woman, Theodosia. She's venerated in the Eastern Orthodox Church, Catholic Church, Roman Catholic. So here she is. It says, at the beginning of the iconoclastic persecutions, the Emperor Leo III demanded that an icon of Christ, which stood over the grand imperial palace, be removed. And it says, when an officer was executing the order, a group of women gathered to prevent the operation. Among them was Theodosia, who shook the ladder strongly until the officer fell from it. The man died from his injuries, and Theodosia was arrested and brought, and she was executed for having killed this guy. She shook the ladder and killed the guy because he was removing an icon of Christ. And they consider her a martyr. They say that what she did was righteous. She murdered a man, Kaiden. She killed a man to save a lifeless image. Do you think that is something that God praises?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think her doing that with the ladder was correct. No.
Well, is it murder to kill a human being to save something that's not even alive?
I guess. Yeah. I guess I would put that under unlawful killing.
Does the Orthodox Church or the Catholic Church consider that unlawful killing?
No, they don't.
They think it was good. You can ask any of them, they consider that to have been a righteous thing that she did. They do think that a lifeless image has more worth than a living person made in God's image. And Kaiden, they do bow down to images. They break both of the parts of the second commandment. This is, you shall neither bow down to them nor serve them. If you're honest with yourself, you will acknowledge that. They do both of them, and they require both of them.
Well,
Bowing down to
yeah,
them and
but
offering sacrifice.
yeah, I would say though, because for the verses you did use for the angel regarding John, the Greek word for that is the same Greek word that was used for Abraham when he bowed to the Hittites.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we
Proskuneo.
can use the word itself as a way to say it's worship alone, because if you use it by the word, then you have to say Abraham worshipped the Hittites pretty much.
That's fine if you say that word. What matters is the Greek. Yes, most translations do say he worshipped. That's fine. You should be concerned about the Greek word. Did he proskuneo? Did he perform proskynesis? Yes. Does God forbid proskynesis to lifeless images? Yes.
Actually, yes, the Greek Abraham did. Yes, the word is proskynesis regarding the Hittites and him bowing.
Yes.
That is the Greek word you use.
And are we allowed to bow down to a living person under certain circumstances?
Yeah, and then you can use the arc argument as well, which I know everyone brings up. But it's still the ark at the end of the day. If God told us to make it or not, it's still a lifeless image at the end of the day.
Well, let's examine the ark argument. Before we examine the ark argument, though, Kaiden, I want to point something out to you. Nowhere in church history for the first 500 years are you ever going to find anybody teaching that we should be bowing down to lifeless images. None of them will be using any of the arguments that the Orthodox have come up with recently to justify it. And nobody in the Old Testament believed that they should be bowing down to lifeless images. No, none of the Jews taught that as a doctrine.
Yes, as a way of worship. Yes, I agree.
Well, at all. You're saying they didn't teach it in this way, but Kaiden, they didn't teach it at all. You understand?
Then we have to ask. Then we're gonna have to explain Joshua.
Then let's explain it.
The book of Joshua.
Okay, let's explain it because we have a section on this and it's really easy to explain. And actually, it refutes the Orthodox Church once you look at it. So let me ask you something, Kaiden. Did God ever command the Israelites to bow down to the Ark of the Covenant?
No.
Okay. Did he at least tell them to look at? Did he tell Israelites, I want you to venerate me through this Ark of the Covenant. I want you all to look at it and stare at it with awe, and just be amazed at it, or anything like that?
I don't have a definite answer because I don't know. I don't know if
did
that
God
was
let them
said.
even look? Did God let Israelites look at the Ark of the Covenant? Were any Israelites allowed to look at the Ark of the Covenant?
Well, they had to. They were carrying the ark around. Unless they had a cover on it that I don't know of.
Well, you are correct. They had a cover on the Ark of the Covenant. It was a big veil. Let me show you something. If you go Google up any picture, Israelites carrying Ark of the Covenant, you'll see the pictures. Do you notice anything? Some pictures they'll show it like just going straight.
Yeah.
Everybody can see it. But sometimes you'll see something like this. And these are the people that are being more accurate with it. See? It was actually covered. Let me show you the scriptures that say that. We have a section on veils. Let me show you this. So if we go down a little bit, here we go. So God says, He says, and you shall screen with the veil the ark of the testimony in the Holy of Holies. And he says, and when the camp sets forward, so he's saying when you Israelites are about to travel, Aaron shall come and his sons, and they shall take down the covering veil and cover the ark of testimony with it. So God commanded that they were to cover up the Ark of the Covenant when they were traveling. That's what it looked like. And he uses this word veil that means you completely hide it. So nobody got to see it. And then even when it was put inside of the tabernacle, only one person was allowed to see the Ark of the Covenant. And that man was only allowed to see it one time per year in the Holy of Holies. Yep. Do you know who that person was?
The high priest?
Yep. The high priest would offer the Passover lamb one time per year. So the ark was not set up as an object for people to look at. It was actually invisible. And this had a spiritual meaning to it that I want you to contemplate, Kaiden. Now, you know that the Israelites were in Egypt for hundreds of years and that they had become idolaters, right? You're aware of the whole history of how God brought them out of idolatry, but it was deeply ingrained in them, the idea of worshiping images. And
of course.
They went right back to it after Moses was on the mountain for 40 days. You know the whole story?
Yeah, where he dropped the, yep.
And are you aware? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there's actually inscriptions on a rock if you look up the actual Mount Sinai place.
Yes, I've seen it. I remember the pictures that they have on there. It's quite an amazing thing. That does seem to be the real site of Mount Sinai too. So, yeah, exactly. The people were obsessed with idolatry, and God ended up giving them a law. He gave them all these rules and ceremonies that are not still here with us as Christians because they were adapted to a specific time period and to a specific people that needed to learn all of these lessons and needed God to condescend to them because of their immaturity and their childish mindset. They were so steeped in idolatry that God couldn't reveal to them the perfect form of worship. He had to give them types that were prophetic of future forms of worship. Do you have that general idea? Like we were just reading John Chrysostom say all these things were types.
Yeah.
Well, the same is true about the Ark of the Covenant. Do we Christians have a physical box called the Ark of the Covenant in the New Testament?
No, we do not.
What's our Ark of the Covenant? Do we have an ark, a true spiritual ark?
Bro, I almost want to say that we are the ark because God dwells in us.
Well,
I would like to say that pretty much.
that's fine. The church fathers say three things. They say Jesus is the ark. They say that the church is the ark, and they say Mary is the ark. They say all three of those things are the ark. But you know what? That's okay. There's no contradiction in saying all three of those things are the ark, because the church is one body with Christ. So if you say it's the church and it's Christ, well, of course you're going to have lots of overlap there. And Mary herself shares flesh with Christ. He got his flesh from her, and she's a type of the church. So all three of those things go together. It is Mary, it is the church, it is the ark. Or it is Mary, it is the church, it is Christ. That's what I meant to say. So let's go back to the concept then of Old Testament forms of worship, okay? God gave them a Passover lamb that they offered once a year, which represents Christ, right? And God gave them a daily sacrifice. Do you know what the daily animal sacrifice symbolizes?
No, I don't.
Well, think about it. We are sheep. We are told that we should take up our cross and die for Christ. Paul tells us we must die daily, put our flesh to death daily. So actually, the daily sacrifice is us. It's you and me. We are dying daily. And the tabernacle symbolizes the church, of course. And our body is also called a tabernacle because God lives in it. You've got all these symbolism, all the symbols of circumcision and all these things. But we don't have the carnal forms of those things anymore. And you just read John Chrysostom, and I could show you many others saying even incense is gone because it symbolizes prayers. And
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk about this event where Joshua bows down to the Ark of the Covenant. So this is what it says in the Masoretic text.
The Masoretic.
Only the Masoretic. That's the one that the Orthodox are using here. Do you realize it's only in the Masoretic text that it says he bowed down to the ark? It's not in the Septuagint.
Is it in the Dead Sea?
No,
Interesting.
it's only in the Masoretic. They have to break their
I
own
hate
rule.
I hate the Masoretic.
So do we. We hate it with a passion, Kaiden. So the Orthodox don't even use the Septuagint in this verse. They have gone to the Masoretic. So let's read what it says in the Septuagint. Well, I'll just tell you what they both say. So here's the Septuagint. And Joshua tore his garments, and Joshua fell on the earth on his face before the Lord until evening. That's what it says in the Septuagint. It doesn't say anything about the ark. In the Masoretic, it says he fell on the earth on his face before the ark until evening.
Damn, I hate the let's look at that in context.
Well, here's the context. Let's say that the Ark of the Covenant was in their midst. It was obviously covered up. But we're not going to assume that Joshua actually went into the Holy of Holies because he's from the tribe of Ephraim. He's not allowed to go into the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest is. So let's say he does it in front of the ark. Okay? Let's do that for the sake of argument. I'm willing to concede that. Do you know what the Ark of the Covenant is used for on the one day of the year where the priest goes and looks at it? Do you know what happens to the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah. What happens to it? No, I just know it's for the atonement of Israel.
Well, you're on the right track. Okay, I'm going to read to you what God says in Exodus 25 when he tells them to make the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm sure you've heard the argument that there are two angels on top of the ark, and therefore the high priest is actually venerating angels. Have you heard that argument? He's venerating the images of the angels.
No, I have not.
You've never heard that? Wow. Well, you've heard partial arguments, so I'm going to address all the arguments then. That is their argument, that you have veneration of images because they bowed to the Ark of the Covenant, which has two angels on top of it. Can you see my screen? This is Exodus 25.
Yeah.
God says, and you shall make the mercy seat of pure gold, blah, blah, blah. He says, and the cherubim, yes, you shall make the cherubim on its two ends, and the cherubim shall spread out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. And he says, and there I will meet with you. And from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim that are upon the Ark of the Covenant, I will speak with you. So God says he's going to actually appear above the mercy seat between the two cherubim. And sometimes the Orthodox and Catholics will quote certain scriptures that talk about the The Ark of the Covenant being the footstool of God. Have you ever heard of those verses? I should add those to this section here. They'll say, the footstool, you see, the footstool. And why would it be called God's footstool? Well, it tells you in the scripture, God will appear above it. He's on top of this thing. So it's his footstool. But let me ask you something, Kaiden. Is it rational to say that when God appears over the Ark of the Covenant and that somebody is bowing down toward the Ark, is it rational to say that they're bowing down to the Ark instead of saying that they're bowing down to God who's appearing above it? Wouldn't that be kind of
Yeah,
weird?
yeah. Didn't
Imagine
he say God only appeared once though?
once a year, yes, but if somebody
So
bows,
what about the other days of the year when they bowed?
well,
That would be my
no
question.
one was in the presence of the Ark except that one time a year.
You don't think people bowed while it was like getting moved around and stuff?
I'm sure. I'm happy to go ahead and concede that they would bow down when God is there speaking, but no, it doesn't say they're just bowing it down when it's walking around. But Kaiden, let's just say in some hypothetical scenario, they're bowing toward the Ark. Wouldn't that be because they're expecting God to be above the Ark of the Covenant to speak to them? Again, there are no instances of this. I'm doing this for the sake of the hypothetical. If somebody's going and making inquiry of God and they're saying, God, I want to speak to you, and they're bowing to the Ark of the Covenant, are they bowing to the Ark or are they bowing to God who they want to speak to them between the angels?
I guess you can make the argument for God.
Well, it would make no sense to say they're bowing down to the Ark, especially when God himself says, I will appear between the angels above the Ark. How blasphemous would it be to say, when God is there, you're like, I'm not bowing to you, God, I'm bowing down to your Ark that you're sitting on. I'm bowing down to your
Yeah.
two angels. That's what the Orthodox and Catholics actually say. They say, yeah, they used to bow down to those angels. Let me ask you a question. You see that here in Genesis, it says that the cherubim shall spread out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another, and the faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. So that means down. They're going to be looking down. It's saying they're bowing. And in all the pictures of the Ark of the Covenant you've probably ever seen, they always depict the angels as bowing. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
They're always bowing down. Let me see if I can get like a good shot. I don't know. Everybody always makes the same kinds of pictures here. It says their heads are to be down toward the mercy seat. Well, anyway, we'll just kind of go with this one. We'll go with the first image. So you see how the angels are putting their heads down? They're still not going all the way. They're also not really depicting it the way God said, because God said that they're to spread out their wings. He says the cherubim shall spread out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings. So the mercy seat is this whole thing, this whole top of the ark. So he's talking here about them spreading out their wings and completely covering the whole thing. They're supposed to be shielding themselves from God and covering their bodies. God says that they do this elsewhere in Isaiah. I'll read it to you. In Isaiah, it says, I saw the Lord sitting on a high and exalted throne, and the house was full of his glory, and seraphim stood around him. Each one had 6 wings, and with 2 they covered their face, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. So he's saying the angels in heaven, when they're in God's presence, they cover themselves with their wings. They shield themselves. They make like a big canopy. If you want to know what that looks like, here's an illustration. Birds are your best illustration because they've got wings like an angel. This is more like what they're doing. You see?
Yeah.
That's what it's depicting. When people make the pictures, they always do a really bad job of it. They're like, oh, okay, it says something about the angel overshadowing the mercy seat. I don't know what that means. Just make the angel sticking his wings out forward. I guess that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's really not what it's what God is describing. He's saying they're using their wings to cover themselves in God's presence, and they're putting their head down. You see how the bird he's putting his head down? That's what it's describing. So a really lame depiction in most of the pictures that people make. So you get the general idea. Then God is saying, when the people are to go to be in God's presence, they are to bow down. They are to be. They are to show respect to God by imitating these angels. It's almost like the angels are telling you what you should be doing. If the angels are doing it, and the angels are greater than us, we should definitely be doing that. We should definitely be hiding our faces from him, from his glory, and showing respect. Do you agree?
Yes.
Kaiden, do you think it makes any sense to bow down to someone else who is bowing? Like if you see two angels facing each other, bowing to God, would it make any sense to bow down to the angels who are bowing down to God?
No.
Isn't that kind of insane?
Yeah.
But the Catholics and Orthodox say that actually this is an example of venerating images, as if we should be bowing to the angels. I mean, the next thing they could say is like, oh, these angels are venerating each other just because they're facing each other. It's complete nonsense. They're facing each other. Why? Why did God say the angels should be facing each other? Are they worshiping each other?
No.
Who are they worshiping at, Kaiden?
God.
Okay, Kaiden, I want you to like write a letter or an email to the Orthodox. I want you to explain this concept to them because we have never seen an Orthodox who understands what is happening on top of this ark. They are so
Well,
clueless.
I'm I'm rational. Me and Hermes or Stefan, like we talked about this. The main reason I did switch to Orthodox was more the fact that like no Protestant or evangelicals hold up to like Orthodox theology, and like when it comes to like the images and stuff, that was more like a leap of faith because like personally with the icons with me, I see them only as educational, and I think like the line for idolatry could be drawn like very easily, and I think they need to be more regulated than they are now. Like when you see them inside the church, it's more educational, but when it comes to like people like full on just pretty much looking like they're worshiping it, I think that's where a line is crossed.
Well, thank God that he is very specific about about the things we're allowed to do and the things we're forbidden from doing. God doesn't just say what the Orthodox and Catholics say. You know how the Orthodox say, we venerate these images, but we don't adore them. Have you ever heard that before?
I think they do say they adore them, but they just don't do
No, they say
that
they don't
one
adore
Greek
it.
word.
No, they're very adamant that they don't adore. They've chosen certain words like we venerate but we don't adore. But these words are so ambiguous nobody even knows what they mean. What is the difference between venerating something and adoring it? Let me give you an example of Spiridon. He's a great example. Spiridon. Oh, I'm not on the right one. Hold on a second. Let me give you an example of the kind of confusing speech they use. Very confusing, very vague. And it's meant to confuse. It's meant to be so inexact, so imprecise, that no one even knows what they're saying. Okay, listen to this here. Listen.
Because there is a clear distinction here made between veneration and adoration.
Oh, okay, Spiridon, what is the distinction? Because you could just as easily say, we adore them, we don't venerate them. And we could sit there and go, okay, we adore them, but we don't venerate them. What's the difference? Let's see if he'll tell us the difference.
Adoration belongs to God alone. But all of us venerate to some extent different people, different things. We show honor and respect. And so we venerate our holy images, but we do not adore them as we adore God. It is not worship.
Okay, Kaiden, I want you to do your very best. I want you to go online. I want you to ask ChatGPT, do anything you want. I want you to scour the internet. Tell me if you can find any Orthodox explaining the difference between between veneration and adoration. You will never find it. There is no explanation. They say we bow down to these images, but we don't adore them. What does that even mean? Do you hear God saying anything like that in Exodus? Like, all right, do not adore the images, but you can bow to them. You can bow to them in a certain way. Like if
I think they need to. Well, no, keep going.
if it were true, if that were true that you could bow down but just not adore, like it's something in your heart you need to be careful you're not doing. You can bow down with your body, but just make sure in your heart you don't love it too much. If that were true, then why couldn't Daniel get away with bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar's image? Why couldn't he do that? Couldn't he just bow down to it but just not adore it too much in his heart?
But wasn't Nebuchadnezzar asking people to worship that specific image?
He said bow down to it. That's all he said. Now think about it. I want you, Caden, to think here with me.
Mhm.
The Orthodox say adoration is when you just love something too much. You love it as a divinity. Okay. If that's true, why couldn't we then just bow down to the image of King Nebuchadnezzar, but not love it? We could just say, I choose not to love your image too much and think of it as God, but I'm going to bow down to it. But you even admitted, Caden, that wouldn't be allowed. We couldn't do that.
No.
They're making distinctions, and they have to make distinctions about things that God never even talks about. They have to create a doctrine that says, well, we are allowed to bow down to images. We are allowed to offer them sacrifices. We're required to bow down to them and offer them sacrifices because we've made this little distinction between veneration and adoration, and it's found nowhere in the Bible. Adoration is a Latin word. It's not even a Greek word. Do you understand how crazy that is to say, we're going to do proskynesis, that's a Greek word for bowing, but we're not going to do adoration. What does that even mean? Is adoration, why shouldn't we just deal with Greek words here? Do you want to know one of the craziest things ever, Caden? You're not going to believe this when I tell you this because it's so crazy. It will blow your mind. Okay.
Go ahead.
The word proskynesis, that's a Greek word that means bow. Now, the Catholic Church in the early 1500s, they were burning people at the stake for making translations. They were burning anybody. If they made a translation of the Bible into English, they would burn them at the stake.
Hi.
But eventually, there were so many Protestants doing it, making translations of the Bible into English, that the Catholics knew that they had to make their own translation. So they did make a Catholic-approved translation of the Bible into English. So they took that word. Now listen, Caden. In every single instance where the word proskuneo occurs, they translated that word as adore, adoration. In every single instance. If that's not mind-blowing enough to you, I want you to know something else. The Orthodox Church made a translation of the Bible into English from the Greek text. They made it in 1904. It's called the Eastern Orthodox Bible, the EOB. I've got it downloaded. If you want to see it, I can pull it up on my screen.
Let's see if there's a PDF of this online.
I can send it to you. EOB. Do you see my screen? Eastern Orthodox Bible.
Yeah, you can.
The
you
New
can, like,
Testament.
DM me.
Okay, I can drop it in here. Okay. Now listen to me, Caden. In every instance where the Greek word proskuneo, that's the word bow, remember now, Caden, remember the argument. They say, we bow down, we venerate, but we don't adore. We don't adore, they say. Caden, in every instance where the Greek word proskuneo occurs, they translate it as adore. In their own Bible, they consider these two words to be interchangeable. And in the introduction to this book, the Eastern Orthodox Bible, they say, this did cause some scandal. They said this did cause some scandal. Listen to this. They said, by the use of adoro as the equivalent of proskuneo, many were scandalized, thinking that it was divine adoration which they were to give to the sacred images, which they knew would be idolatry. And they're like, yeah, this is a bit of a problem. They're like, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. It's total hogwash, the distinction they're making that bowing down is allowed, but adoring is forbidden. Because they even say that bowing and adoring are the same thing in their own Bible. Do you see how crazy that is?
Yeah, the Greek word is the same for that. You are right.
The Greek word for what is the same as what?
Proskuneo. What's it called?
Yes, proskuneo is the Greek word.
Yes.
Adore is a Latin word, and they're the same thing. They're both talking about bowing down. I've given you a lot of information, Caden. I don't know if you can, if you know how to process all this information, but you could bring us any Catholic or Orthodox argument. We can refute it. We can refute it specifically, but we can also refute it just with this philosophy. The philosophy that you need to have, that every Christian must have, is that whatever was from the beginning is true. Whatever the church universally taught from the very beginning must be true. If they rejected this doctrine from the beginning of bowing down to images, and that God wants to be worshipped through images, if they reject that, then you must reject that.
Well, during the divine liturgy, like we're not sitting there bound, like, at least for my church, not once have we had a service where you sit there and you bow to an image. Images are not really even used so far that I've seen in the divine liturgy. They're just in the church. The only thing I've seen regarding an image is just there's icons on the actual gospel that he uses, and that might be it. But I do think images in themselves, it's not idolatry, but I think it's what you do with them is what can be idolatry.
Well, you're right. Idolatria, that means image service. So you're right. Service is an action. An image by itself is not idolatry. But the
I
actions
agree.
that they're doing are idolatry. And the two actions that they're doing that constitute idolatry would be bowing down and serving. See, bowing down is when you say, I am a servant, and then actually serving
Huh?
is when you're serving. The serving is the latria. You could bow down to somebody and say, I am your servant, and then not serve them. But the Orthodox say, I am a servant, and then they serve. And they call themselves iconodules. Have you ever heard of that word, iconodual?
Yeah, that was brought up
Do,
during that council of Nicaea
do you know
too.
what iconodual means? Do you know what that means? You know what icon
Uh,
means?
the defenders,
Do you know what dulia
or
means?
like the servants, the
Yes.
servants. Yeah.
Icons, servants, icon slaves. There's no distinction between servant and slave in the Greek. They're icon slaves, and they have to accept that too. If they ever want to say, I'm a servant, I'm not a slave, then you should just point out to them, in the Greek, there's no difference. The word is used for slavery. God says, remember the day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of slavery. That's the word dulia. They weren't just, servants. Like, that's like a nice little word. Like, oh, it's just so nice here. Slavery, servitude, it's all the same thing.
Mhm.
Are you allowed to be a slave of images, Kaiden?
No.
Are the Orthodox image slaves?
Some.
Will they all bow down to the images? They all offer service to the images. They give sacrifices to the images, and they call themselves image slaves. So are they slaves of images? It's not that hard. They clearly
Yeah,
are.
you could say so,
Let me
but
show you. Let me show you a video. I want to show you a video real quick here. Okay. I know that this is more of a comedic. Well, we consider it comedic, and this guy thinks he's funny. This is a big Orthodox channel. It's called Bible Illustrated. It's made by an Orthodox guy. Do you see the title of this video?
yes.
How to venerate an icon in the Orthodox Church. Okay, watch this video with me. It's 1 minute and 37 seconds. Here we go.
Venerating an icon in an Orthodox church is very simple. Once you get to the end of the line, make the sign of the cross and then allow prostration.
He said make a low prostration to the icon.
Then you make another sign of the cross and allow prostration. These actions should be followed by a prayer to the one depicted. Then you kiss the icon. Remember, Christ is kissed on the feet, saints are kissed on their hands. If Christ's feet aren't depicted, you kiss his hand. If only head is shown, for example, on the icons of the Mendelian or the beheading of the Baptist, you kiss the edge of the beard. Then you take your wallet to leave a donation in the slot on the icon stand or a little basket next to the icon. Uh-oh, that denomination is far too big. You need that money for that other stuff. That's a penny. You can't leave a penny in church. You're not a poor widow. At least, not as of yet. Did you try your pockets? Yes, rummage through your pockets, even though you had a good solid minute or 2 or 5 while standing in that line to locate the appropriate funds. Now, because of your negligence, everyone's waiting. Some of them are even kept outside, exposed to the elements and snakes. Everyone's staring at you as you found it. So you leave your donation and make the final sign of the cross and allow prostration. You slightly bow to the person behind you, who then proceeds through the exact same dance of veneration and locating the funds.
Bruh. That was such a goofy video.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, that was goofy. I'm not gonna lie.
That's one of the most shameful videos I've ever seen. He meant that as comedy, but it came out as absolute blasphemy. Just disgusting blasphemy. He not only tells you got to be bound to the images, I mean, that's disgusting, but in a video about bowing to images and telling you how to bow to images, he says make sure you do your low prostration 3 times. He gives a lengthy section talking about making sure you give that money.
Bro, I don't know why, because that is like for our offering thing, it's literally just regular old bowls that you bring down the aisle. I've never seen that type of
Hmm.
whatever he just did at the church I go to.
Well, Caden, if we were to go
I don't
through all the layers of sin, heresy, and corruption in the Orthodox Church, we'd be here for many, 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 many hours.
Oh, I bet.
The worst heresies committed by the Orthodox Church would be idolatry, their blasphemies about Mary, their endorsement of going to war, their allowance of divorce and remarriage up to 3 times, which is adultery 3 times. It's forbidden. And then many other heresies, such as simony, that they charge money for baptisms. That's one of the worst sins. That'd be 5 massive sins: murder, adultery, blasphemy, idolatry, simony. Serious sins that would prevent us from ever joining their church. And you add on to it many other things like demanding that everybody be offering incense, which God says is an abomination to him, and saying that you're
Y-
not a real Christian if you don't worship in the way that God has forbidden.
Um, I've not I've never seen a money slot for an icon machine or like whatever that was. I've never seen that. I don't have that in my church at all.
There's no shame.
They just
Well, I always love to hear that too. Well, we don't have that in our church. We've heard that with simony too. We know countless Orthodox churches that charge anywhere from $300 to $1,500 for a baptism.
wait for you to get baptized.
Yeah, $1,500.
What the? Yo, someone needs to find the bishop and stop them. What are they doing?
But they don't, Caden, because it's allowed. They don't have any doctrine forbidding such a thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and it's a sin for them even to seek donations. It's a sin for them to get salaries. Anyway, Caden, I've told you enough for you to chew on, for you to be convicted by. I won't add anything else to it. You join a call and you let me tell you the problems with the Orthodox Church. It's up to you to
Yep.
either be convicted about it or not.
Well, I'm going to obviously do more research because I don't think it's smart to just do like, oh yeah, let me just listen to whatever this guy says. But I definitely do agree with you on a lot of the stuff because personally, um, I think icons should only be used as visual representations more than what people do use them for.
Yes, we agree. We have pictures, we have illustrations. But
Yes, I
idolatry,
see some people in here do have
yes.
icons
But
as
we don't
their
serve images. We're not image slaves. And we don't
no.
think that God wants to be worshipped through images. The way you
No, he
worship,
doesn't need it.
well, you can worship God's
Or
image. There's a way to worship God's image correctly. Do you know how to do that, Caden?
you can say
Well, what is the image of God? Is it a block of wood?
us
Yes. So if you want to worship God, you want to do service to God's image, what would that look like?
feeding the poor, helping the hungry.
You got it. I don't even need to say anything. God is not served by offering incense to a block of stone.
Wait, have you ever been to a Orthodox liturgy
Yes, I have.
where you're like this is an abomination?
Well, I was 17 when I went the first time, and I didn't know a lot about the Orthodox Church, but I know what the fathers say about it because I've been studying them for over 10 years. I know that the church rejected that idea. It is a pagan idea invented by demons that God wants to be worshipped through lifeless images. On the contrary, people do not worship God by doing it. They degrade God because you are the image of God. You're God's representative on the earth. If you, as the representation of God on the earth, bow down to and become enslaved to your own creation, what does that look like? Does God enslave himself to his own creation? Would that be a good thing for God to do that?
I mean, he kind of low key did when he came incarnated. So I don't know. I don't know if that would be like the best argument because he humbled himself down into a servant to serve his own creation himself. So I don't think that would be the best argument.
Kaiden, human beings are made in God's image, so you're right. It has never happened that God has bowed down to a lifeless thing. God has served a living image of himself, people made in his image. But God doesn't bow down to something lifeless. God doesn't enslave himself to lifeless things, nor should we.
No.
And ultimately, even though God has served us, even though he became a servant during his incarnation, human beings must serve God. We are God's slaves
Of
forever.
course.
And so when we bow down to a lifeless image, we make a kind of similitude of a reversal of how things ought to be. God ought to be reigning over us, being our Lord. We ought to be reigning over the creation. We cannot be servants. We cannot be enslaved to the creation. The creation was made to serve us, especially lifeless creation. And
I agree.
God never made a law that we are to worship him through bowing down to lifeless images. He never made any such law. He made the complete opposite law. And the Catholics and Orthodox think that they can contradict that. And they pretend that it was taught by the early church.
Yeah, I don't think they should go to the Old Testament regarding icons because it just wasn't used.
Well, you
But
wouldn't you
but
wouldn't know if
I
it
know a
wasn't
lot of
used,
people
but you
I do know a lot of people make the argument that he is now incarnate and now we can use images, which I do agree on. But if you're like praying to the actual image or any of that, I think that crosses a line because I do I do have a Jesus icon in my room, but all I well no, it's in my sister's room, but all I use it as is a visual representation. I don't pray to it. I don't worship it. It's just like one of those things where it just gives you like something visual to look at rather than me like bowing down in a worship way to it or anything.
well, the truth is when Jesus came in a physical form, Caden, he was a very ugly man. That's something that the early church taught. Even the chief idolater, John of
Wait,
Damascus, yeah, even
actually,
the guy in the 700s who wrote this first big formal defense of worshiping images, a guy named John of Damascus, even he preserves the tradition that still existed in the 700s that when Jesus was incarnate, he was an ugly man. So even the images that the Orthodox Church makes of Jesus are not accurate. It's just their own imagination. They're worshiping an imagined picture of Jesus that's not accurate. He's got long hair. Jesus didn't have long hair. And they say,
I don't know. We can't prove
we
that.
can prove that. Yes.
Really?
Yeah, well, we can prove that because the whole church condemns it. They say Christ himself condemned the idea of men having long hair. Yeah, it wasn't allowed. Jews didn't allow long hair. Yeah, they
What
didn't.
is that in the Mosaic law?
It's in the Mosaic law that having long hair is like a woman, that it's degrading. Yeah, everybody who had long hair in the Old Testament dies because of their long hair. You've got, yeah,
Samson didn't die. He died because it was cut.
yeah, but it still had something to do with his hair, didn't it? Samson was a Nazarite, And Nazarites were the only group who were allowed to have long hair, and they lived a life of humiliation because they looked like women all the time. David had a son named Absalom, and in the scriptures it specifically mentions that he rarely cut his hair. He let it grow extremely long. And do you know how Absalom died?
No.
It says he was riding his horse. He was running away from somebody on his horse, and it says his long hair got tangled in some branches and hanged him, and his enemies threw spears into his body. So it says he ended up not cutting his hair, and he paid for it. His hair got him tangled, and he died. In the scriptures, like in Revelation, it says that the creatures that come out of the pit have hair like women. That's what it says, hair like women. If men are allowed to have long hair, why does it say they've got hair like women? Long hair is for women. Paul is explicit about that in 1 Corinthians 11. It says their hair is given to them as a veil. Long hair is for a veil, a natural head covering. Men are not allowed to do that. Paul says that if a man has long hair, he degrades himself. So no, Jesus did not have long hair.
I do see. Yeah, Paul does talk about it, but it wasn't against Torah law though. I think we need to make sure on that though.
Well,
He does discourage it, but this wasn't like a sin against the Torah, as in something like cutting off your beard.
I
When
don't
it comes
know
to
what you
that,
mean. What do you mean it's not? What's not a sin against Torah law?
long hair like isn't specifically mentioned in the Torah. I mean,
Well,
beards are,
yes, it
but
is.
not long hair.
It is mentioned. Because in the Torah, it says that a man shall not exchange his clothes with a woman. That's what it says. And they always understood a man's beard to be his natural clothing and a woman's long hair to be her natural clothing. Men are not allowed to wear veils like women. That's why they're not allowed to have long hair. The only group that's allowed to veil their head is a group called the Nazarites. And they always lived in humiliation. They symbolized Christ who was veiled when he took on human flesh. He became like his church. For her sake, he came down as a human being, and he had a veil in order to hide his divinity. That's what his flesh was. It was a veil. But men are not allowed to have long hair. Only the Nazarites were as a type of Christ. Nobody else was allowed to have long hair.
Well, it depends on how long the hair is. If it's going down to like your back or your booty, then yeah. But if it's going down to like your shorter length, that's not woman like at all.
If it can cover
Like
your
the I
face, it's too long. That's what they all said.
Well, if hair goes down from like the side and touches your shoulders, that doesn't really.
The church fathers say if it covers your face, if it can cover your face, it's too long. That's what they say. We've got a whole section on it, Kaiden.
Yeah, but how long is too long?
If it can cover your face, it's too long. If it can cover your eyes, it's too long. That's what they say.
Can you pull up the thing for me?
Sure.
Just so I can see it.
Sure. Okay, here we go.
And
Long
plus,
hair on
modern
men.
Jews. Oh.
Well, modern Jews don't obey any laws. Modern Jews don't obey any laws of the Old Testament. Okay, here's Clement of Alexandria. Here's Apostolic Constitutions. If you want the specifics, I will go to Augustine, Gregory the Great. They're the ones who are most specific about it. If it gets in the eyes, it's too long. But here's Apostolic Constitutions. That beauty which God and nature has bestowed on you, do not further beautify, but modestly diminish it before men. Thus do not permit the hair of your head to grow too long, but rather cut it short. Lest by a nice combing your hair and wearing it long and anointing yourself, you draw upon yourself such ensnared or ensnaring women. Nor may men destroy the hair of their beards and unnaturally change the form of a man. For the law says, you shall not mar your beards. For God the Creator has made this decent for women, but has determined that it is unsuitable for men. But if you do these things to please men in contradiction to the law, you will be abominable with God, who created you after his own image. If therefore you will be acceptable to God, abstain from all these things which he hates, and do none of those things that are unpleasing to him. So it says you'll be abominable to God if you let your hair grow long. Let me read you the specific ones that talk about it
Wait,
getting in the eyes.
what is that source?
Apostolic Constitutions. Book
Who was that
1,
written by?
Section 2. Apostolic Constitutions is one of the most reputable books in the whole church. It's based on an older book called The Ordinances of the Apostles, which we find being quoted in the 200s, but it's a bunch of laws that the bishops all agreed came from the apostles, and Clement's name is stamped on it. Clement of Rome, Peter's disciple.
Pope Clement? No, I'm joking.
Yes, but you said you wanted to hear them specifically talk about it getting in the eyes. If it gets in the eyes, it's too long. Here's Epiphanius.
They
What?
ain't cause of that. Well, I'm light skinned, so I have an afro. If I pull my hair down, it goes over my eyes. I guess I'm cooked, gang.
Yes, if you have an afro, it's different. Afro hair goes up, so I don't think it's as much of a problem. But we should still be careful about having long hair that looks good, that attracts people. Long hair is always more attractive than short hair, whether you're a man or a woman, black or white. Long hair is always more attractive.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, yeah.
Because there's more you can do with it, you can play with it, you can arrange it and beautify it. Here's Epiphanius. He says, but what is worse, in the opposite error, some cut off their beards, the mark of manhood, while often letting the hair of their heads grow long. He quotes Ordinances of the Apostles. He says, and as to the beard, the sacred instruction and teaching of the Ordinances of the Apostles says not to spoil, that is, not to cut the beard, and not to deck oneself with meretricious ornaments, or have the approach of pride as a copy of righteousness. Long hair was proper only for Nazarites because of the type. So he says it's a type of Christ, and that's past.
Yes.
Let me keep going, though. Here's Augustine. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Augustine says, he's very upset that some of the monks grow their hair long. By the way, Kaiden, did you know all priests in the Orthodox Church, practically every single one of them, has long hair like a woman?
I didn't know that because literally every priest at my church has like no hair, bro. I'm not even
If
gonna
he's
lie.
bald, that's different. If he's an old man.
Well, no, they all have hair. They just keep it short.
All the priests I see, all the ones I just showed you, they are all into having long hair. So the thing that Augustine and all the other church fathers condemned from the beginning is now a common practice. Here's Augustine. He says, now this I command, which gives us to understand that it is not cleverness of reasoning that we are to look for, but authority of one giving command to attend to. For whereunto, I pray you, he says, where, I ask you, pertains this also, that people are so openly against the apostles' precepts that they wear long hair. He's saying there are some people who are so against the apostles' commands that they wear long hair. He says, I shrink from saying more against this fault out of respect for certain long-haired brethren in whom, except for this, we find much and nearly everything to venerate. So he's saying, some of these brothers, everything about them is wonderful. They're very righteous men, except this one thing, he says, that they grow their hair long. He says, but the more we love them in Christ, the more solicitously do we admonish them. That means he's rebuking them. Nor are we afraid, indeed, lest their humility reject our admonition, seeing that we also desire to be admonished by such as they, wherever we chance to stumble or to go aside. This then we admonish, so holy men, not to be moved by foolish quibblings of vain persons, and imitate in this perversity them whom in all else they are far from resembling. For those persons, hawking about a venal hypocrisy, fear lest shorn sanctity be held cheaper than long-haired. Wow, he's very verbose, isn't he? But he's saying, listen, you guys, it'd be, you think that your long-haired, your long hair is still righteous, and he's saying, no, obviously you guys are being hypocrites by having long hair while living such a righteous lifestyle. It's a contradiction. He says, And they do not consider what is the difference between that prophetic veil and that unveiling, which is in the gospel. So he's referencing the Nazirite vow. They'll always use the Nazirite vow to justify what they're doing, but he's saying, no, that was a prophetic veil. And he's saying there's an unveiling that's happened in the New Testament. That's why we don't do the Nazirite vow where men have long hair. Let me read it again. He says, and they do not consider what is the difference between that prophetic veil and this unveiling, which is in the gospel, of which the apostle says, when you shall go over unto Christ, the veil shall be taken away. That, namely, which was signified in the veil, interposed between the face of Moses and the beholding of the people Israel. That same was also typified in those times by the long hair of the saints. For the same apostle says that long hair is also instead of a veil, by whose authority these men are hard pressed. Seeing, he says openly, if a man wear long hair, it is a disgrace to him. The very disgrace, says they, we take upon themselves, but we take upon us. So he's saying these people say, no, we accept the disgrace. We accept it. The very disgrace we take upon us for desert of our sins. And Augustine says they hold out a screen of simulated humility to the end that under cover of it, they may carry on their trade of self-importance. So these people know that it is degrading and humiliating to have long hair. And he's saying, yeah, these guys are putting on fake humility, saying, oh, well, yes, we deserve to be disgraced for our sins. Augustine says, yeah, but Paul forbids it. You're not allowed to do it. Also, notice how he uses the word screen. He says they hold out a screen of simulated humility when they wear their long hair. Do you know what a screen is?
No.
Well, I mean, you know what a TV screen is. You know what a screen is on a window. A screen is something that, it's something that covers up something else. It's something that goes in between something. So like your window screen is the thing between the house and the outside. So these men are wearing long hair. That is a screen between them and whatever's outside. He's telling you that it's something in front of them. The long hair is hanging down in front of them. That's why it's a screen. Notice it's not just hair behind them.
Yeah.
Yes. He says, etc., etc. And then that further device of theirs, if words can express it, how painfully ridiculous is it, which they have invented for defense of their long locks. A man, say they, the apostle has forbidden to have long hair, but then they who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of God are no longer men. And he says, oh, dotage unparalleled. Well may the person who says this arm himself against Holy Scripture's most manifest proclamations with counsel of outrageous impiety and persevere in a tortuous path and intend to bring in a pestiferous doctrine that not blessed is the man who has not walked in the counsel of the ungodly, and in the way of sinners has not stood, and in the chair of noisome wickedness has not sat. He says, with which sleight these persons deceive ignorant people, with which cunning craftiness and machinations of the enemy, both they themselves are whirled around, and in their whirling they intend to make the minds of the weak, which cohere to them, so in a manner to spin round with them, that they also may not know where they are. So, I mean, Augustine's really laying it on thick, saying this is ridiculous. These monks, these righteous brethren are wearing long hair and are deceiving people with ridiculous arguments, justifying it. He says a lot here. He says a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Here's Gregory the Great, also a great one. He says, the priests are rightly forbidden either to shave their heads or to let their hair grow long. He says, the hairs on the priest's head are both preserved to cover the skin and cut short so as not to veil the eyes. You see, it should not be falling in front of the eyes. That's the one I was thinking of. But Augustine says it's a screen, which of course is something that goes in front of you. Gregory says it should not be veiling the eyes. So yeah, it is talking about something in the front falling down over the face.
Okay.
There are a lot of quotes here. I mean, I have a million that we probably couldn't get to. There's enough for you to chew on, Kaiden. You've been in here now for a little while. You can go if you need to.
Hey, Kaiden, it's me, Steven. Just wanted to tell you, Thank you for hopping on to talk with us.
What's up?
No, I just wanted to tell you it's me, and just wanted to say thank you for hopping on the voice call to talk with us, because these
You're
are,
welcome.
very important matters that I think Luke definitely helped to facilitate and address for you.
Yeah, I think these type of discussions are important as well because I do have to go more into this now and wonder why they have done some of these things. A more in-depth analysis, I should say.
Well, Kaiden, I'm going to be real frank with you. I'm going to be bold if you'll allow me.
Yes, please. I love boldness.
Well, Kaiden, you're not really the studying type. If you do want to study these things and learn them in more depth, you really should spend time with people who do study it, because then you can ask for proofs of these things. You can say, hit me with 1,000 quotations on this topic, and you'll get more than you're asking for.
Mhm.
But if you're going to do it on your own, you're pretty much not going to do it at all. That's what I'm saying.
If y'all let me in the server, it would be nice because it would be nice to ask you guys some stuff as well to be a part of that.
Well, I know that you're very addicted to video games. You spend hours and hours and hours on them. You don't spend time
Bro,
reading.
okay, okay.
Yes, Caden.
Um,
We spend
that's
hours and hours and hours reading and studying and organizing these things. Not just organizing it for ourselves, but for you, for everybody who would want to learn these things. So
yes.
my admonition to you is that you should not presume to think you can figure these things out on your own, at least at your
No,
current maturity level. I don't presume that even about myself. I rely on my brothers to help me. I rely on a lot of other people who read together with me, especially a few friends that I've known for, a long time. One of them I've known for more than 10 years. And so when we do our reading together, we're fact checking each other. We're making sure that we're really being honest about the things we're reading. If you're all by yourself, there's no accountability. So
of
don't
course.
don't isolate yourself.
I agree. I do have a question for you. You do believe that the sacraments are real, right? You believe that?
Of course. Do you believe it?
Oh, of course. I'm just asking, I know since you're not a part of like the Catholic or Orthodox Church, have like you guys been able to like find a church that actually like holds up to these sacraments? Because if you truly believe they are a part of your salvation, wouldn't you want to find a place that takes them as important as you do? I'm just asking because you know like how a lot of denominations that are not of the Catholic or Orthodox, they are just mostly Protestants and evangelicals who, just take off from Luther or Calvin and not necessarily the church fathers.
Yes. Of course, we understand the importance of the sacraments, Caden, and we'll join any church that truly preserves the teachings and practices of the early church. But let me ask you a question. Let's say you
Yes.
lived in, North Korea. Now, North Korea doesn't allow any churches. They don't allow Catholic or Orthodox. Would you go and okay? Let's give a better example. Let's say you lived in China. China has a couple Catholic churches in it. They're very state run, they're very state controlled. Let's say you
Yes.
had no access to an Orthodox church. Would you
Mhm.
go to a Catholic church and receive the sacraments from a Catholic church just because you need the sacraments and you don't want to go without them?
Yes.
And would the Orthodox Church allow that? Does the Orthodox Church say you should go to the Catholic Church to receive sacraments if you don't have anywhere else to go?
No.
They don't allow that. They completely forbid it.
Yeah. I know Catholics allow some other denominations to take part of their sacraments.
Well,
Orthodox does not.
nowadays, the Orthodox and Catholics are becoming very ecumenical, and they are about to join together. You will see that in your lifetime. They will
Bro,
completely
you're
fix the
lying.
schism. Yeah, it will happen. It's underway right now. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Everything leads to that in the end. But no,
Then
we're not gonna go receive the sacraments from the Catholics or Orthodox if they're heretics. That's the Orthodox's own teaching, that we should not go to heretics to receive the sacraments from them. So this is how it is, Kaiden. We'll join a church if any church proves themselves to be the early church. And until then, we're going to practice what the church told us to do if we happen to live in an area where there are no true Orthodox bishops. What we're supposed to do is have baptisms apart from them. The baptisms are valid no matter who they come from, as long as they're done in the way Jesus commanded. That's even
Yeah, I think we actually agree on that.
the Orthodox Church also has to acknowledge that. They have a lot of ignorant priests today who contradict it, but we could prove that that
Yeah.
is the church's teaching. Even
I I, I don't know why people are like that. I don't understand, like, especially like how Catholics are regarding like no salvation outside of the Catholic Church. I think all that is pretty dumb in my opinion.
well, we don't believe that there is salvation outside of the truly Orthodox Catholic Church. We would
Oh yeah, I agree with that, but you know how like they mean like the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes. Well, I'm saying that the principle is correct as long as you're applying it to the true church. There is no
Oh yeah,
salvation
I
apart,
agree.
but we think that the way you enter the church is through the sacraments. It is through baptism primarily. So anyone who is truly baptized, anyone who's baptized is entering into the church, but the problem is most of those people have heresies, and so they're not really Christians, they're heretics. They've entered the church, but they've entered as a thief. They've entered as someone who will eventually be exposed on Judgment Day to be a sinner.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really bad that pretty much every Christian before the Reformation will deal with this. Because I mean, the way you have to look at it, right? Christ did have one church, especially before the Great Schism, and I mean, you would have to admit in a way that the church was compromised, and the gates of Hades did prevail the church in some type of way, if it within the first 400 maybe 500 years of the church they have fully fell away into idolatry. Because if you think about it, let's even say let's give you 500 AD. For 1,000 years, for a whole millennium, practically every Christian was in a form of idolatry.
Say that again.
Um, let's just say 500 AD. Um, the icons and the incense, all this has started. Well, even the reformers, I don't know if they used some of these stuff too. I know they still hold to the sacraments, but for about 1,000 year period, you will have to admit that pretty much 95% plus of Christians were in a form of idolatry for a whole millennium.
Yes, actually, about 70% of Christians, yes, for a millennium have been in idolatry. And I would say that that was prophesied in the Old Testament. Did you know that you, as a Christian, are part of the new spiritual Israel, Caden?
Yes.
Christians are the real Israel, not the Jewish nation. Christians are the true Israel. And that
uh,
that has blessings that come with it, and has some bad
Curses.
things that come. Yes, unfortunately, Israel was faithful to God in the beginning and then fell away into idolatry in the Old Testament. And Israel in the New Testament has done the exact same thing. It was faithful in the beginning and then fell into idolatry.
Well, you said you did say it was prophesied. Can I see that? I'm actually curious about that.
Well, if you want to see church fathers saying that it's fulfilled, that's the best thing I can do for you. See, I could show you the Old Testament. I could show you the similarities between Israel then and Israel now. I could show you how the kingdom was split in half between Judah and Israel, and how the kingdom has been split in half here in this modern church.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what I say. I think the Great Schism kind of like reminds me of the kingdom of Israel splitting it too from Judea and all that.
Yes, there are a lot of similarities, but the most obvious one is the idolatry. The fact that the kings who rule have these wives for some reason. Their wives are always into idolatry, like Jezebel, and they're enforcing it. They're requiring it, and they're forcing the priests of Israel to require it. And that is true of the New Testament church as well. You've got these empresses like Irene and Theodora in 787 and 8, afterward in the 800s. enforcing the worship of images, requiring it. For some reason, it's the women doing it. 2 empresses are responsible for requiring it and convening the Second Council of Nicaea, and then the so-called Triumph of Orthodoxy Council a little later. So yeah, there's a lot of prophecy, there's a lot of types, but at the end of the day, we would point to men like Athanasius, living during the Arian crisis, who said that just as Israel fell away, the church is now falling away, and he quotes a bunch of passages relating to Israel, and he says these all apply to the church. And for goodness sake, Kaiden, read Revelation. In Revelation, it's like, have you read like Revelation 17, where God is talking about like the whore of Babylon?
I have, because I think Revelation is really fun to like go
It is
down
fun.
into.
It's confusing.
Yeah, you got to be very careful with that stuff though.
I know. I'd be the first to say that. We don't read Revelation very much, and the church fathers don't quote from it very much. But just there is one thing you can confirm. I mean, you can confirm this. You can
Yeah.
confirm who the whore of Babylon is. It's pretty easy. Go. Do you know
Well,
who
people say it's Jerusalem. People say
it is? That's correct. It is Jerusalem, but there are 2 Jerusalems. There is Israel, and then there's the new Israel. Here, one second. I'm getting a call. Just a moment, guys.
Okay.
All right, I'm back.
All right.
Kaiden, the whore of Babylon's an easy one. It's really easy to figure it out because in Revelation 17, where God is bashing her, he's saying, "You wicked woman, you say to yourself, I sit as a queen." You know, and he says, "You sit in beautiful clothing, beautiful royal garments." And he says, "You say things like, I am not a widow," even though he says, "You've lost your husband." And he says, "You're the mother of harlots." He uses all these phrases. These are all quotations of the Old Testament, of things God says to the Old Testament church of Israel. He says
does.
all those things. He says, "You're mother of harlots. You sit there as queen. You claim that you are not a widow, but you've lost your husband." He says, "You've lost me." And he says all these things. You know, you sit on the 7 hills and everything. Obviously, that is Jerusalem, but it also applies to the New Testament church because there are many things that she does in Revelation that the carnal Jerusalem never did. For instance, it
So
says,
with
yes.
my fault. No, finish real quick.
Well, you should read it. You should see all the different aspects of her that, while they do apply to Israel, there are a lot of ways that they do not apply to Israel that have not been fulfilled yet. And it is
Oh
clearly
yeah,
being
because it talks
fulfilled.
about Rome.
Yes, we know that sitting on the 7 hills is talking about Rome. Now, you know, was Jesus ever married to secular Rome? No, that's not his
No.
wife. His wife, this mother of harlots who's lost her husband, is his church. That's who he's talking to. It applies to the New Testament church. The whore of Babylon, the mystery Babylon, the reason why it's a mystery is because a lot of people don't understand that is the New Testament church that will become a great big whore in the last days. And why is she called the mother of harlots? She's not just a harlot herself, she's the mother of harlots, many harlots. Who are all those harlots? It's
My fault. Say that again.
all the harlots are the denominations. That was my point. All the different groups, all the heretical sects. Anyway, I won't spend a long time focusing on that, but that clearly is something prophesied that the church would fall away. She would become a whore, and it wouldn't just be the Old Testament church, it is the New Testament church that is destined to become a whore. She will betray her husband, she'll lose her husband, she will be a widow, and all of her daughters will be harlots just like her. And she
Can
will,
you say this? Can you say this is Roman Catholicism,
of
since the
course,
Vatican is Rome?
of course,
Because you know that's one of the reasons why we schismed from the Roman Church, because the Pope became some secular slash he pretty much became a theocrat.
well, he got in bed with earthly governments. All of the church did
Yep.
after Nicaea, and it says she
Yeah, that is
commits.
true.
It says she commits fornication with all the kings of the earth. Now, that's exactly what the church did, not just in the West, in the Catholic, the Roman side, but in
Oh yeah,
the East. They obeyed their emperors. Their emperors took control of the church. And you want to talk about Rome? What do the Orthodox call their own rival capital, Constantinople? Do you know the title they've given Constantinople?
The second Rome.
They call it New Rome. That's correct. New Rome is the official title for Constantinople. And do you know how many mountains Constantinople sits on? How many hills?
7.
Here, I'll
Istanbul.
Google it for you. Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, was built on 7 hills, a deliberate design choice by Emperor Constantine to emulate the 7 hills of Rome. So, Kaiden, it is both
Oh, that's interesting.
the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. They are both that whore of Babylon that sits on 7
Well,
hills.
well, if you see them become one, I don't know. I might have to dip from that.
They already are one. You should read Ezekiel. You should read Ezekiel. Read about the two. Remember, the kingdom of Israel is split between 2 sides. There's Judah and Israel, but they're
Yeah.
both evil. They're both against God. Neither of them have legitimate rulers. Remember?
Uh-huh.
It's just like in Israel. Remember when God speaks to Ezekiel, he talks about the 2 harlot sisters, Aholah and Aholibah. Have you ever read that story? It's pretty grotesque. It's pretty horrible
No.
how God says he's going to judge Israel. He says these 2 women symbolize Israel and Samaria.
So,
Yeah, I would say that's the Catholic and Orthodox Church.
there are 7 kings.
We don't have to talk about Revelation much more, though. All right, Kaiden.
And
I
well,
gotta
I
go.
know I'm reading it for my own. Okay.
Yes.
Good talk.
Yes, good talk. And you are welcome to speak in the newcomer section and ask questions about things, or have another call if you want to. But you can't be in the server unless you're of the same mind as us, that you have to get away from these heresies. If you're not convinced they're heresies yet, then you're not ready to be in the server. This server is only for all the people who are united in their purpose to obey the early church and who have rejected all the heresies of the Catholics and Orthodox and Protestants.
Do you take a communion?
Maybe we'll talk about that if you join the server, but yes, we Christians must take communion.
Ooh. I know. I'm asking, do you specifically take communion? Like if you take the blood in the body.
I'm not taking communion right now because I'm not worthy. But the church says if someone has the discipline of a priest, then they must take communion. And they say it's actually all Christians' job to have the discipline of a priest just in case a time comes where there is no bishop who can consecrate it for them.
Where's that said?
I'll show you if you come to the same conclusions we have about the heresies of the Orthodox, but you can't do it out of order. You can't say something like, show me all the places where the church fathers say we can have the Eucharist ourselves if the church becomes apostate. And we'll say, okay, we'll show you all those parts. Here you go. Here's all the church fathers saying we can have the Eucharist and baptize if the church becomes apostate, or if there's persecution going on and there's no bishop available. Here you go. Here's all the proof, Kaiden. What are you just going to say, Kaiden? You're going to say, well, I don't think the church has become apostate, so I don't really care. You need to first verify what the church's teachings are, verify that the church is apostate, and then look at what we're supposed to do in response. But don't go to the response until you're convinced that the church is apostate.
Give their power into. Interesting. I need to look at a little off topic. I'm sorry. I'm still reading 17. I need to go look at Daniel 7 again because I did have something regarding Daniel 7 in the church. I'm sorry, that was kind of off topic there.
Okay, Kaiden. Well, you can head out and we'll talk to you again later. You can always send me a message if you like to call again.
Yeah, I think a second call would be good. Let me do some I took the stuff that you have said and I have put it down in my notes here and I will go over them because I think it's smart to, you know, go from both sides instead of one. Because that's what I do for everyone and everything because you shouldn't have a bias. So, yeah.
You said you're
Once
going to
I
get both
go
sides,
through
both sides of what? You're going to hear the Orthodox out?
Just well, yeah, that's what I do for anyone. Just because make sure there is no bias in place,
Well,
and
Caden,
then I will come in.
I'll tell you why that's not the right way to go about it. The Orthodox tell you that you have to join the original church, right? And they claim to be the original church and to have preserved all the original doctrines, right?
Yep,
And the Catholics also claim that, don't they?
they do.
And the Oriental Orthodox Church, they claim that. So how are you supposed
Yeah,
to
but I think
know?
it's
How are you
same.
supposed to know what the truth is? Remember, I asked that question in the beginning. What's the method God gave us to know for sure what the truth is?
Uh, the fathers.
Yes. You can't go to the Orthodox Church to find out what the truth is. You're basically just going to be hearing a bunch of apologetics against the church fathers. But the Orthodox Church is not the source of the truth. They can't be, or else
Well,
how could you even know? Because you'd have
well,
to
yeah.
compare their teachings to all the other people claiming to be the original church.
Well, that's the problem within because a lot of the church fathers contradict each other even before
Oh,
like
please, Caden.
400 AD
Oh, please, you're
on
killing
the
me.
line.
No, they don't. It's a lie from the Catholics and Orthodox. The early church was unanimous in their teachings. Name one teaching that the church was not unanimous on.
Um, it was something regarding Clement of Alexandria, I think. Hold up, give me 2 seconds. Actually, no, I think that was never mind. That was regarding the perpetual virginity of Mary.
They were unanimous on the perpetual
Um,
virginity of Mary. The early church was unanimous on many, 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 many things. If you find that they are not unanimous on something, you can take that to be something that's not that important. But the church is unanimous. All the churches that were in communion with each other all
oh,
agreed on essential doctrines, and there were many fine points that they didn't really care to make a big issue out of because they weren't things that were handed down by the apostles. We're talking about icons. We're talking about whether God wants to be worshiped through images. The only thing you need to do is go verify whether doctrines like that we're telling you are heresies, go verify if those things really did exist from the beginning, or if the early church condemned those things. You can't go to the Orthodox Church and say, give me your apologetics for this. Their apologetic doesn't matter in the end, don't you see? Don't you agree with that concept of just going to the early church, verifying what they teach, and then comparing it to what the Orthodox say?
yeah.
You can't start with the Orthodox. They are 2,000 years after what we're supposed to be studying.
Or 2,000 years after.
Well, they are now. That's where we are right now. Even the Orthodox Church has evolved in their views. Did you know in the 700s, the council agreed that it would be a sin, a massive sin, to ever make an image of God the Father. They quoted from John of Damascus, who said it would be the utmost impiety and insanity to ever make an icon of God the Father. But the Orthodox Church allows making icons of God the Father now. So that's why I say 2,000 years later, because even their views are changing. The current version of the Orthodox Church is different from the Orthodox Church 200 years ago. So go study the early church. Don't start with the current version of the Orthodox Church.
Uh, I don't, I don't, I don't see anywhere. Hold up.
You don't see anywhere what?
I do you have something like from like the Orthodox Church itself, not like some priest or a single bishop regarding the icons of God the Father. I'm talking about church as a whole, not some bishop
Endorsing
condemning
it?
it.
Are
Not
you looking for them condemning it or endorsing
no,
it?
no, like no, allowing God the Father, like the church as a whole, not
Sure.
not a single bishop,
Well,
not
what
a
do you mean the
patriarch,
church
but
as a
the whole church.
whole? Because obviously I can't get you every single bishop in the whole world.
Eastern Orthodox as a whole.
You want me to get every bishop? How do I do that? Even if I showed you every bishop, if I showed you all
Well,
bishops saying something at this time, wouldn't you say they're all wrong if it was something you disagreed with? And you just say that doesn't count?
uh, if it's if it's ecumenical, then if it's ecumenical and they all do a certain doctrine on something, then yes.
It's impossible, Caden. What you're asking for is impossible. Even if I showed you all of them, you would say they're all wrong, and that still doesn't invalidate the church.
No, we had ecumenical councils.
But aren't the dogmas of a church, can't you find the church's dogmatic teachings outside of the ecumenical councils?
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that isn't dogmatic, though, regarding
It
the
doesn't
church.
matter. Just allowing it. Let's say you have 1,000 churches, and they're all in
Okay.
communion with each other, and one of those churches practices one of the most heinous sins imaginable. It doesn't matter what the sin is. Maybe it's simony, like selling baptisms, or maybe it's committing idolatry or making images of God the Father. Okay, let's say the one church is doing that, and all of the other churches know that that church is doing it. And see, this is a very small example. It's not as extreme as the reality. The reality is there are many, many, many Orthodox churches that have images of God the Father. It's not just one. But let's go with the example. There's just one, but then you've got 999 other churches that condemn this. They say this is not right. This is a sin. But let's say
Well,
they all remain in communion with those people who are committing a heinous sin. Now, is this not proof that they condone it if they continue in communion with that group that does it? Aren't they required to excommunicate heretics, Caden?
yeah, they are.
That's how the church works. Can the church just remain in communion with idolaters or Arians or Gnostics? Is that allowed?
Well, no, that's why you have schisms of like Orientals and the Syrian Church of the
Right.
East.
So they will schism over something like the essence energies distinction, or whether Jesus had a human soul or a divine soul, or whether he has one nature or two natures combined into one. All this minute stuff, but they're not going to schism over something like idolatry. Do you see the hypocrisy there?
Yeah.
They're going to continue in communion, and they're just going to say stupid things like, well, we don't do it. Yeah, but you're in communion with those people. You're not condemning them. That's a problem. If you are living in the same house as somebody who practices some sin, they just do it openly right in front of you, and you say, yeah, this guy's my brother, this guy's my Christian brother in the faith, I have communion with him, and he just practices sin, and you don't rebuke him, then you're disobeying Jesus, aren't you? Doesn't Jesus say, if your brother sins, go show him his fault? If he listens to you, you've won him over. But if he doesn't, take other witnesses. And if he doesn't listen to the witnesses, tell it to the church. And if he doesn't listen to the church, excommunicate him. Isn't that what Jesus says?
Yes.
So the Orthodox Church is totally failing if they're just continuing to tolerate people committing grievous sins. You can't just say, Caden, you can't just say, well, our church doesn't do it. That's meaningless. The fact is they condone it.
Well, the official Orthodox of Church of America website, they literally say verbatim, traditionally it is indeed incorrect to depict God the Father as an old man in long beard or in any other human form.
Yep, that's what the councils say. That's what John of Damascus says. And yet I can show you lots of Orthodox teachers online, like Josiah Trenum or Seraphim Hamilton, saying that it's allowed, and that it's allowed because there have been miracles that happened in association with these icons.
Well, yeah, that's when I'll go to, you don't listen to a single priest or a single bishop, because
you've forgotten, Caden. It's not just that we can't listen to them. Those guys have to be excommunicated by the rest of the church. If the rest of the church continues in communion with people who practice sin, then they share in the sin. They're also guilty of it by association. They are having communion with an evil person and calling him a brother instead of excommunicating him like Jesus said.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's meaningless to say, they just don't do it. Some people don't do it. That doesn't matter. They're corrupt from the core. They allow all kinds of sins. And not only do they allow some sins, but they command some sins as necessary for salvation, such as bowing down to images, offering abominable incense to God, worshiping Mary.
Can you give me sources of Orthodox like bishops or priests condoning this? Because I mean, they're literally going against what the church says, like verbatim.
Yeah, I mean, I could also just show you a ton of pictures of Orthodox churches, of their interiors where they have images of God the Father. They're not being excommunicated. They just say, well, maybe you shouldn't do that. Look, it's either a massive sin or it isn't. It's either utmost insanity and impiety or it isn't. Do you know what utmost means? John of Damascus, their chief idolater, their chief teacher on the subject of icons, he has all these books on holy icons. This guy says, if you make an image of God the Father, that is the utmost insanity and impiety. That means
Yes.
there's nothing beyond it. That's the most extreme version of it. Idolatry is one of the worst sins ever, Kaiden. It's hard to come up with a sin worse than idolatry. And they're doing this thing that even their own top teachers say is the utmost insanity and impiety. So you can't just say, well, I'm not doing it. Meaningless. Here's a quote from Apostolic Constitutions. There is no
I'm not.
sin. There is no sin more grievous than idolatry, for it is an impiety against God.
I'm not. Okay, well, there's one. Let's see. I don't see an icon. I don't see a God of Father icon within the Eastern Orthodox Church. I see an icon of the Holy Trinity, but that is referred to the three angels who visited Abraham and
You're
not like God.
Caden, they do exist. I could spend a long time showing you all of them, but it would take too much time. There are tons. And I can
I
show you
am
videos of them also fully endorsing it.
I am I am looking via Google right now, and the only one I see is the one regarding the three angels who visited Abraham, at least regarding.
What's it gonna change? If I show you a bunch of examples, you're gonna say, well, my church doesn't do it. I could show you tons of examples. I can show you Josiah Trenum defending it and saying, yes, on the one hand, we probably shouldn't do it, but you can, and it's okay, and it's not a big deal.
No, I don't condone it.
It doesn't matter. I won't go off on that rabbit trail. I've given you enough stuff to chew on, enough serious stuff that if you want to have another call, we'll go over all these things with you in more depth. But get the philosophy right, Caden. You must start in the beginning. You must study the early church's teachings. Pick any topic. If you want to do another call like this, I can go over all the topics, all the ways that they have contradicted the early church on very essential doctrines, not minuscule stuff. Like whether Jesus' soul was human or divine, or whether the two natures were combined into one or remain separate, or the essence, energies, distinction of God, or any of this nonsense. Really essential stuff like idolatry, adultery, murder, blasphemy. Really basic stuff.
That's interesting.
Somebody get Josiah Trenum from the recent video. We posted it in the server where he was just contradicting himself a million times.
Is this guy in the YouTube video like endorsing this?
Yes, this is a big Orthodox apologist. I know he looks
Right.
like a cringe kid. He really is one of the cringiest people I've ever seen. But yeah,
Bro, why?
he's got a big PhD. He's got it all.
A PhD does not mean anything.
Well, obviously, but the Orthodox Church has great respect for him. He has 30,000 subscribers. Let's see here. Josiah Trenum on images of God the Father. Oh, Peter Hears. Give me Peter Hears.
Things and does it for we worship the only God Trinity in it. Ooh, I need to actually paste this to read this later.
Somebody find the Peter Hears clip. Anyway, we'll wrap it up for now. We got to go do stuff. It's a Sunday. We've got our responsibilities. Okay, farewell, guys. Got to go. God be with you.